in people like Tim Kennedy, who do sheepdog response, to come in and actually teach you the correct ways to react in these active shooter scenarios, implementing good plans, making sure people run through it and they know where the doors are, where the hallways are, where to go. Are these kids properly trained on first aid? And we as American citizens, we have to put ourselves in vulnerable situations where we have to go into a gun-free zone, but you don't have to go unarmed. Essentially, I always carry with me a tourniquet and I know how to use it. I always carry with me bandages. I always carry with me first aid kits and things like that. So when you go to an area where you're unarmed, there are other things you can do essentially too to help out. And that's just a brief.
And I think you have, is that a gun? Are you cleaning guns in the background there?
Yeah, I'm cleaning guns right now. I clean guns every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time.
That's awesome.
Because, I mean, if I need to use my gun and it doesn't work, then I'm a jackass, you know?
That's true. Why don't you go ahead and respond, Destiny?
I mean, do we want to go like point by point? Is that okay, or?
Yeah, go ahead, point by point.
I mean, so the very first thing we opened with, an armed society is a polite society. America is the most armed society in the world. It doesn't seem like we're a very polite society if you're measuring politeness by, say, a number of gun homicides.
Okay, well, I'll give you that right now. The Lefties Love Pew Research Center. This was come out January 30th, 2018. Five facts about crime in the U.S. Number one, violent crime in the U.S. has fallen sharply over the past quarter century. The two most common cited sources of crime statistics in the U.S. both show a substantial decline in the violent crime rate since it peaked in the early 1990s. So that right there is debunked now.
Okay, so what you just said is that crime today in the United States has fallen sharply relative to previous crime in the United States, which I agree with, but that doesn't debunk the idea that the United States has more violent gun crime than any other country in the entire world right now, and more guns than any other country per capita in the entire world right now. That stat doesn't speak to that at all.
Let's look at these other facts here then, buddy, because what's happening across the country, across the world, here, where's my little chart at?
Also, I'm talking about violent crime related to firearms, not just violent crime. I think in terms of just violent crime, the United States is pretty comparable to other countries. I think it's a little bit higher, but our gun crime, our violent crime tends to be more like lethal because we have so many firearms in the United States.
I disagree, but you know, it is what it is. Here's what I believe.
Wait, you disagree with what? With cited fact, or?
Well, I disagree with the fact that this is a more dangerous time, that there's these more violent crimes with guns, we'll say.
Well, no, I never said it was a
time before.
Well, I just want to be clear. It's not a more dangerous time. Crime has fallen in the United States since the 60s, actually pretty substantially. We're living in pretty peaceful times since we've been recording any type of violent crime in the United States. I'm not saying we live in violent times. I'm saying that we have a very unique gun homicide problem in the United States that doesn't exist in any other country.
Okay, I mean, but these other countries also have other things. So let's look at France. Let's look at Paris. Let's look at all these places where they don't have guns, but they still have these heinous attacks happen. If you look at, did the homicide rate fall after Britain banned guns in 1997? No, it spiked, you know, dramatically.
Okay, so real quick, citing off a one-off terror event in Paris, France doesn't compare to the 8,000, 9,000 gun homicides that occur every single year in the United States.
But here's my thing. Why does no one on the left go out and have an issue when over 2,000 crimes, murders, gun shootings in Chicago happen? No one calls for gun control then. No one goes out there in the streets and marches. No one gives a shit.
People do all the time. Chicago is one of the toughest gun laws in the country. It's actually one of the reasons that people on the right point to.
And my buddy Dominic Izzo is actually running for Cook County Sheriff. I know. If you go to heyjackass.com, it shows you all the statistics of everything happening in Chicago right now, day to day.
Wait, so what was your point? That
No. I'm saying no one goes out and marches on the streets. No, there's no conversation about gun control all the time. Oh my God. And you see all these kids are marching here and there. They're going here and there. They've got the women's march, people funding them. You don't see people pouring out in the streets when 2,000 people are being murdered in Chicago. No one gives a shit because it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't fit a narrative. What's happening in Chicago
doing it
horrible, but no one's going out and doing anything about it.
Okay, we've did it like 7 times, okay? So let's focus on this one thing. So after every mass shooting event in the United States, there is a huge outcry from the American public for something to get done. Some sort of legislation will be suggested, something will inevitably die in either the House or the Senate, and then nothing ends up happening, and then the next terror event happens, and then we all get out on the streets, and there's a huge outcry again. But I mean, there's definitely a massive outcry every single time one of these events happens.
Well, I don't ever see them, especially in Chicago and other places.
Wait, you
like
don't
that,
see a
'cause like I
huge
said,
outcry,
we're
right? You don't
officer.
see a huge outcry what about after Vegas? You didn't think there was a huge outcry after that?
Oh, I said Chicago is what I'm talking about specifically.
Okay, so you don't think
In
that
Vegas, and after the Vegas shooting, yeah, people called for the banning of the bump stock. I remember that. Everyone said we should get rid of the bump stock because we found out that the bump stock was used in the Vegas shooting, and then that's how he was able to imitate such rapid fire that was happening and all that. So there was a call for that, and then President Donald Trump has announced that he will try to put an end to all that.
Sure. So I'm not even sure what the point is right now. I mean, I think there is an outcry. I can't speak to why there are or aren't enough marches, I guess, in Chicago specifically about gun violence in Chicago specifically, but I don't see what that has to do with any of this conversation.
Okay, we'll continue.
Well, I mean, I guess going back to the point that we pivoted away from like 6 or 7 times, the violent crime with firearms in the United States seems to be higher than any other country in the world. Our violent crime is very lethal in the United States compared to other countries because we have access to such powerful weapons to do it. That seems to be a problem that's unique to the United States that I think we should probably work on fixing.
And how do we do that?
I don't know. It's really hard to say. There's a lot of proposed ideas. I've heard things like gun buybacks. I've heard things like maybe people that have misdemeanors with gun-related charges should be prevented from purchasing firearms. Potentially, the FBI should be able to no-gun list somebody like they can no-fly list somebody. It's a hard thing to solve, but there has to be like a conversation or some step in that direction. One thing that I've heard cited again and again is that the CDC has a lot of trouble proposing any sort of gun-related solutions because Republicans seem to stonewall them when any type of research for gun-related violence comes up because the NRA doesn't like the idea of the CDC studying gun violence.
Yeah.
Can you take that for me?
So
I think there's a lot of things that can be done. I think there's a conversation to be had in a sense that there are some steps that could be taken, but we have to understand that there are a lot of laws already in place, you know. And what we saw, especially with this shooting in Parkland, Florida, is that the law was there, but there were so many things that had dropped. The ball was dropped so many times, which allowed this individual to gain access to this weapon. You know,
wait, how was the ball dropped for this character?
He was posting images of himself self-mutilating on Snapchat. Posted...
I just want to go through these one at a time. So if somebody posts an image of them self-mutilating, they shouldn't be allowed to purchase a firearm? Is that something that
I'm saying if someone sees that should be something that's a red flag, especially when the police have been called over a 7-year span 39 times for abuse, for elderly abuse, and for different things like that. I mean,
okay,
now
so
that we
do you
have
think?
The facts,
Well, do you think that if the police is called to a house 30 times, that nobody in that house should be allowed to purchase a firearm? I'm trying to figure out what you think should be different here. If the police has been called to a house 30 times, that person shouldn't be allowed to buy a gun now, even if there's no conviction or no formal charges?
No, there should have been, because it is a felony to torture animals and things like that. They'd been to his house for that. That alone would have been a felony, thus rendering him from being able to have a firearm.
Wait, so he has a felony conviction?
No, I'm saying if they would have done their job, he would have gotten one.
Okay,
which means he would not.
Real quick to interject, and we're talking about the Florida shooter, right? And I believe the FBI was sent a tip, actually, like a YouTube comment from him where he said, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." So in my opinion, I do believe the FBI was sent credible information and they didn't do anything. But go ahead.
Well, the FBI can't prevent you from purchasing a firearm. They can no-fly list you, but they can't keep you from getting a gun unless you are like literally like an imminent threat. Like if they have reason to believe that you are about to go out and kill somebody immediately, the FBI cannot no-gun list you. For instance, the Fort Hood shooter was on an FBI terror list. I believe even a no-fly list. He was on a terror watch list at least. But that guy, they weren't able to prevent him from getting guns, again, because Republicans don't want the FBI to be able to mess with your Second Amendment right to purchase a firearm.
Yeah, but after you make a statement like, "I want to be a professional mass shooter," at this point in time, you start to question the person's sanity. And this person's sanity was questioned. They actually had a mobile center come by from the local cuckoo bin, whatever you want to call it. They had psychiatrists come by and evaluate. And they said that they didn't believe at the time that he was a threat to society because of 2 reasons. 1, he was in school, and 2, he was with his mother. But at one point in time, his mother died, and he was out of school. So that was another red flag. These were things that happened prior to that. And if you pay attention to these things and you looked at it, the ball was dropped many times.
Well, so what I'm asking you here is, what is the thing? Like, let's say that we can go back in time. What is the law that you would make here that would prevent this guy from getting a gun? I'm trying to figure what that is. Like, you're giving me a lot of kind of red flags, but which one of these red flags are enough for you to say this person's Second Amendment right to own a firearm needs to be revoked?
Well, animal cruelty is a felony, so therefore a felony automatically...
He doesn't have a felony conviction.
But you're not listening to me. That's why the ball was dropped. If the ball wasn't dropped, he would have a felony.
Wait,
the ball was dropped because they did not respond to that.
But so we don't know if that actually happened. This is the United States. We have due process. Just because we saw a picture or heard an accusation doesn't mean that somebody is convicted of a felony, or we just assume they are and they lose one of their constitutional rights.
Okay, sure thing. We'll go with that. But either way, that is felony law. That is a law in Florida. So if that would have happened, that would have been the response, that he would get a felony.
He didn't have a felony conviction.
And not be able to, because the ball was dropped.
Can you? What exactly happened that the ball was dropped? Did he get an expensive lawyer and plea it down, or was he just never formally charged with anything? If somebody wasn't formally charged with a crime, we can't both sit here and say they're a felon. That's not how that works in the United States.
I never said he was a felon. I said that they didn't do their job. If I start posting pictures right now on Instagram of me kicking my dog, of me attacking my dog, of me killing animals, right there, that's going to get reported. And Instagram, as their part, they're supposed to respond to that. And then they would contact law enforcement and go, hey, man, we got a person using our platform that is abusing animals, that is harming animals and doing this. At that point in time, they would come and go, what the fuck is going on with you? What are you doing? Are you fucking crazy? And they would look at the pictures and go, you're clearly out of fucking control. And then they would go and go, okay, now we have to respond to this. We have to look. Okay, shit, man, we've been called to your home how many times? You're abusing elderly people. You're this and that.
Yeah, I think we're getting caught up on the semantics of this. I'd like to move on.
Well, it's not a semantics. It's because what I'm looking for is my goal. If I was the person in charge of crafting any type of legislation or policy, is I want to find out what can I do going forward to make it so that these events don't happen as much. And Joe seems to be saying that, well, all of the systems in place are there for that to be prevented, but they just all failed. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what in particular failed and
Destiny,
why.
What would you, like, you told me before the show, you said you're pro more gun control. Can you, like, quickly outline, like, what does that look like to you?
So this is a really hard thing to say because I know that there are some, like I think the Bradley Institute, there are some people that study gun violence, but the CDC, which was our largest source of gun-related violence studying in the 1996 and before that, since they're no longer allowed to study it, it's kind of hard to say what solutions would work. I know that some places have tried gun buybacks. For instance, Australia has tried that, and the homicide rate was reduced by quite a bit, but more importantly, they didn't suffer any more mass shootings. It's hard to say if those things are 100% tied to one another, but maybe a gun buyback might be something that's worth trying in some cities to see how that works. I don't know. Maybe there are different types of we can be more strict on who's allowed to purchase firearms. This is something I suggested before. So, for instance, if you have a misdemeanor gun crime, you can still purchase a firearm. That doesn't prevent you from doing it. You have to have a felony crime or some sort of domestic abuse charge or something. Maybe different ways. Maybe different types of mental conditions. I don't know. It's really hard to say, but something has to change. And I don't like it that anytime this happens, the solutions are like we need to arm all of our kids and all of our teachers and send them to class like they're, ready to jump into a war zone. I think that that's a really irresponsible way to go with that discussion.
What's wrong? So you would not agree like more guns in an area makes for a safer area? You would not agree with that premise?
I don't necessarily think so, no.
Okay, can you respond to that, Joe?
I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, if I'm going to carry out a crime, if I'm going to carry out an attack, I'm going to go where it's the easiest for me to go. So if I'm looking at, say, there's a high school over here to my left, and they have no armed security or anything like that, versus the high school over here right down the road that has armed security, I'm more than likely going to go to the area where I have the ability to inflict as much harm as possible, because that is a soft target, that is a weak target, and it's easier to go that way. That's why when I said an armed society essentially is a polite society, because what happens in a lot of these attacks, we always see individuals who aren't armed, who are in areas where they're vulnerable, and that person who is a criminal, who 95% of the time got an illegally obtained firearm, and use it to carry out an attack on these victims, these people who did not have the ability to protect themselves.
Wait, did you say the Florida shooter was an illegally acquired firearm?
No, I said 95% of intentional murders are done with illegally purchased firearms.
Gotcha. So
yeah,
all these other countries don't have guns, but it seems like people don't go there and kill everybody with guns all the time. Like,
I mean, you can rent a truck. I mean, the thing is
these countries don't have 10,000 people a year killed with truck attacks. Like, I don't like the pivoting to other topics. Like, this is very frustrating for me because guns are a real problem in the United States. And when I bring up that, like, so you're saying, well, you know, people pick soft targets. Well, okay, all of Europe is a soft target, but it seems like they don't have these problems like we do. And then you say, well, one time a guy got in a truck and ran somebody over, or two or three times.
It happens quite a bit.
Quite a bit in a country, or not a country, but a continent of more than 700 million people. I'm willing to bet that without even looking at the numbers, I'm pretty sure that we've had more gun homicides in 1 year that's like 150 times higher than all the people killed with truck like attacks across all of Europe, which is a continent with twice the population of the United States. I don't think that people are dying en masse to truck attacks across the continent of Europe like we kill ourselves with guns here in the United States. Are there countries where people take trucks and they run them into schools full of children to kill as many kids as possible? Or
well, because with a truck, a building would be a hard target, so no.
I mean, we have seen a ton of truck attacks from ISIS across the world. I mean, obviously not.
My point is this. We can pretend that guns don't exist all day long. We can sit here and go, they don't exist. We can ban the manufacturing of guns. There's still guns in circulation. People will still obtain them. We have said that heroin is illegal. We've said that all these drugs are illegal, but guess what? People still get it. People still use it. People still die in overdoses from the shit. People will still get access to them at some point in time. There's no way to go around and try to find every single one of them, and they'll be taken and wiped off the face of the earth. And if you take all the guns away, what's going to happen? They're going to find something else. If you look at Stephen Paddock, if you looked at Nicholas Cruz, what are they doing? They were online looking up how to make HME, homemade explosives. So people will find ways.
Okay, but bombs are really hard to operate. That's a difficult thing. You've got to purchase all of the things without getting listed somewhere. You've got to learn how to assemble it and do it all yourself. This is a long time process where other people have a higher likelihood of figuring out what's going on. You've got to set the bomb up in the correct area. You've got to figure out a way to detonate it. You've got to hope that you do optimal damage while doing it. It's way easier to run to the store, grab an AR-15, 150 rounds of 5.56, run into a school and start shooting and kill a ton of people. It's a way more reliable way of doing things. A lot of
these people don't just wake up and go, you know what, I'm going to commit, some mass shooting. This is something that they have thought about. If you go back and look at Columbine, these guys were writing in journals. They were talking about this stuff. They had thought about it. They had researched. People will find a way to do it. Not everyone you don't just wake up and snap one day and go, I'm going to go shoot a whole bunch of people. There was usually some time in between where they had thought about it. They had researched things like that. The Columbine guys, they said that we researched mass shooters. We researched all these people so we could improve from the mistakes that they had done. So you could take guns away is all I'm saying all day long. Bad things will still happen. We live in a world right now where guns do exist. And it doesn't matter what we do, how many laws we implement, criminals don't follow laws. All we're doing now at this point in time, every time we execute a new law, every time we try to put in a new law, we're taking away the right of law-abiding citizens and giving them the right to be able to protect themselves from psychotic individuals out there who want to do harm.
Sure, but we haven't really tried much. I mean, like, we make different types of guns harder to buy. If you go to California, there's a lot of really silly regulations on how big your magazine size can be and weird attachments that they put on rifles so that they're harder to shoot or whatever. But in terms of, like, making an honest effort to try to combat gun violence in the United States, I don't really think we've tried much at all. Every time a school shooting happens, there's a huge outcry. Maybe we talk about banning something really stupid like a bump stock or whatever, then that's kind of it. The conversation dies there. It doesn't seem like we're really giving an honest shot into figuring out how to curb the massive amount of gun violence that occurs in the United States.
So do you think if we, let's say we ban AR-15s,
I don't want to ban AR-15. I don't think that would help. To be fair, I think a very, very small fraction of gun violence is even done with rifles. It's like
yes, you're right.
Yeah, it's like 250, I think, rifle deaths a year compared to like 6,000 or 7,000 handgun deaths a year. And I like AR-15s.
According to the FBI, more murder victims in the U.S. died by handguns in 2016. Handguns 7,105, rifles 374, shotguns 262. FBI data from Texas showed 630 by handguns, 51 by rifles, 31 by shotguns.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I don't think that banning a particular type of...
Someone pointed out in the chat that there was an assault weapons ban from 1993 to 2004 and it did not work.
And that was when Columbine happened. There were, I believe, 16 or 17 mass shootings that happened in that span of an assault weapons ban.
Yeah, sure, but like, I mean, like an assault weapons ban, like restricting access to like certain types of guns for everybody. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be a very effective way of doing things.
So what do you think? What do you think? I'm just curious. Like, you know, what do you think would have to be done in order to curb this? Because in my mind, like I've been in combat, man. I've been in Iraq, I've been in Afghanistan, I've traveled the world. I've seen some pretty effed up stuff, and I've seen that the world is there's just bad people out there. People will find a way to do something regardless of restrictions or anything like that.
You don't believe that. What you just said, you don't believe. You said you were deployed in Iraq. If you found out that there was a group of soldiers that had long knives, would that be as scary as a group of soldiers with AK-47s? Like, even you don't believe that. They don't deploy you guys over into the Middle East and give you guys bombs to use to blow up people, right? You have rifles. You've got guns. They're much more effective in combat than trying to run at somebody and stab them with a knife or drive your truck into an enemy platoon or something, right?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is evil exists, bad people exist. That's my point.
But that's not even true. That's not even.
It is.
No, it's not.
There's bad things that happen all the time.
Sure, but people are driven.
If we didn't have the media like we did, it wouldn't be like this huge conversation half the time. It's that we live in this society now where it's a 24/7 news cycle constantly going. So you hear about this stuff and you're like, oh my God, this sounds like every day I walk outside, it's a fucking war zone. But it's really not that bad.
No, I agree with you.
Evil people exist.
Okay, so I agree with you. I agree with you that it's not as bad as the media makes it out to be. We have a very cancerous media cycle right now, and I don't disagree with that. As we established earlier, the violence that occurs in this country right now is much less than any other country. But the problem is we have a very unique type of violence that occurs in the United States that just doesn't seem to happen in any other country. And that's kids being executed in schools in front of their fellow classmates by former classmates or current classmates. This is something that is unique to the United States. I feel like this is something that's probably worth addressing. Other countries, like, I think it's very telling that when we're trying to figure out ways to curb gun shit related to the United States school shootings, that your first go-to area to compare it to is the Middle East. Like, I don't think any other country views their school situation like that we need to have our kids taking formal combat classes or we need to arm them and armor them and whatnot so that they can survive in these hostile environments that is the public education system. That just seems really extreme to me.
Well, these other countries too that you talk about don't have populations. They don't have the Hispanic population like we have here. They don't have the black population like we have here. And if we look at statistics and we look at things like that, these people are more prone to carrying out different attacks. We have the gangs. We have things like that.
Were the Columbine shooters black? Was the Florida shooter black? Was the Vegas shooter black?
There's always, but you're talking about overall numbers.
Well, right now I'm talking specifically about school shootings.
Overall.
Wait, well, no, before you were talking about all gun-related incidents.
Sure, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, I was talking about school shootings here, but yeah, we can talk about all gun-related things as well, sure.
Yeah, if you're pivoting to just school shooters, then that's a different conversation. So I think we're talking about gun violence in general, right?
Okay. Sure, we can talk about all gun violence if you want. So you think that because we have black and Hispanic people here, there's nothing that we can do to curb the amount of gun violence in the United States? Is that what we're changing to, or...?
No, I'm just saying that we have a population of diverse people, and specific people tend to carry out more crimes than others. If we were to take away the crime committed by blacks, the crime committed by Hispanics, our numbers would drop drastically.
Okay, but we have black and Hispanic people here.
No, so, I'm talking about here too, though. If we take that away from our country as well, if we take that out of the equation, ours drops.
Okay, and if we killed every single poor person in the United States, crime would drop as well. I don't see how that helps the conversation move forward.
Well, I mean, if you look at the what was it? You're talking about the Nadel Hassan, the guy from Texas, the Fort Hood shooter. That dude. You're looking at the attackers in San Bernardino. You look at the attacker at the Pulse nightclub shooting. So there's a lot of other people out there carrying out crazy attacks that aren't just white. They aren't these little kids in at Columbine. It's not the Stephen Paddock. We have a few of those guys, yes, but if we're going to statistically look at it, I'm saying we have these types of people that are more prone to committing these crimes. Why? Because they're growing up in fatherless homes. They don't have positive or reinforcement. They don't have that male role model that kind of guides them in the thing. And with Nicholas Cruz, you have this guy. Parents are dead. He's got massive issues that are going on. And like I said, there were many warning signs out there to go, hey, this kid is a potential threat. Like there's a lot of things already in place. It's just that people that their job is to focus on that need to get doing it.
Sure. So, I mean, you brought up that thing again, but you didn't list me. I guess other than them not trying to take him out on felony charges for things that they saw on Instagram, I mean, I don't see any other systems that failed here where something was illegal and didn't work how it was supposed to work. I don't like, this is something that gets brought up a lot too, that the United States has a lot of like mentally ill people or something. Other countries have these problems as well. It's not like every other country has a population of healthy people whose minds are all perfectly sound, but we're the only country where people have access to a gun where they can take their mental problems and turn it into 15 or 20 dead people, you know, like in a heartbeat. That, again, I think that it's something related to guns in the United States that we have to address.
Well, it's not that they're just mentally ill. It's that they're having these reactions to a lot of these drugs. I mean, you look at a lot of these drugs that we see advertised. If you say watch CNN, you watch Fox News, you can't go through like an episode of Hannity or a show of Hannity without seeing a drug that's being pushed. That,
is America the only country with these drugs?
No, but what I'm saying is a lot of these drugs that we have here that are illegal in other countries as well because they see the harmful side effects of that.
Wait, so like Prozac or Ritalin or Zoloft, these are drugs that are illegal across Europe but are legal in the United States?
I didn't name a specific. I'm saying that there are drugs that are illegal in other countries but legal here that have adverse reactions. That's one thing that we can do.
I don't think that's true.
A positive step that we can do.
I don't think that's true. I think that's literally 100% fake. I've never heard that in my entire life before.
Let me speak from personal experience. When I was in the military, when I was going towards the end of getting out, I was fucked up in the head massively, and I had, I don't know how many times, a gun in my mouth where I just wanted to blow my fucking head off. I was oppressed, I was angry, I was suicidal, I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't the person I was, you know, a year or so down the road. And I remember walking into my bathroom one day and I was like, this is it, I'm gonna fucking blow my head off. And I remember I threw my hands down on the table, and when I threw my hands down on the counter, whole bunch of pill bottles knocked over, and it was all these drugs that the Army had been giving me, that the VA had been prescribing me. And I said, you know what, the only thing different between me a few years ago when I was happy with myself all the time and I wasn't fucking angry and about to flip and psychotic are these drugs. Those drugs are introduced into my life, and that changed my life drastically for the worst. I lost friends, I got into fights all the time, I was borderline gonna flip the fuck out. And I hit these pills and I knocked them over, and I realized this is what's different. So I understand from a personal point of view that I can understand how these drugs have an adverse reaction. I was on fucking pins and needles. I went to jail. I got into fights. I was doing all kinds of fucked up shit. My mom was at a point where she wanted to disown me. You know, I had to make a change, and when I flushed those things down the toilet, when I got rid of those drugs, I haven't been angry like that anymore. I don't snap. I go out in public. I go to these protests. People jump in my face. They spit in my face. I don't snap. But if I would have been Joe on these SSRIs, on these different drugs that have these adverse reactions, that would have been a different story. I might be in jail for the rest of my life right now.
And I just Googled just to see what the stats were on that. I do have a Newsmax health article. It says top 5 medications Americans take that are banned in other countries, and they are mainly antipsychotic drugs. So it does look like there are a lot of American prescription drugs that are banned.
Okay, but are these antipsychotic drugs linked to shooters? Because that's the important question. I don't like this. I don't like this anti science narrative. Like I can't.
Well, if you go to say look at Citizens Commission on Human Rights, antidepressants are a prescription for mass shootings. That's one of their articles, and it breaks down how we go back and we look. It says with the if you go and it shows, it'll state numerous times these mass shootings have happened, or any type of violent crimes like this. A lot of these people end up being linked to these type of drugs. Another mass shooting potentially linked to psychiatric drugs. This is by Insider, and it happens over and over and over again.
But do you think
was prescribed a mind-altering sedative hypnotic diazepam, which mental health industry watchdog Citizens Commission on Human Rights International said plays a role in this senseless violence because it has a reaction to a part of the brain that makes these people become emotionless, where it makes them become this and that, and it's easy for them to think and get this idea. I'm just telling you from personal experience, like, I would think fucked up stuff. I would be driving down the road and break down screaming and crying and punching my fucking steering wheel till the goddamn airbag went off. I would sit there and think about doing effed up stuff all the time. And once I made that decision that it wasn't me, that I wasn't bad, that it was those drugs, my life has changed. I got married. I have a kid. I'm happy all the time. I haven't been depressed. I haven't been suicidal. I can tell you those drugs are horrible
for
and they have
you.
horrible effects
For you.
But
Okay,
we're seeing
well,
it for other people.
I just looked this up here. I'm gonna share this on the screen so everyone can see. I'm not being biased. I'm just looking up information. Here we have, it says CCHR International, the mental health watchdog, another mass shooting, another psychiatric drug, 27 drug warnings, and 1,531 cases of drug-induced homicidal ideation back needed for federal investigation.
Okay, so this is not a causal link. Do you think that the people that have the tendency to do these types of mass shootings might also be the people who are trying to seek these drugs? Like, you understand that there could be a lot of confounding factors here. If you have a group of 100 people and 10 of them say they are super fucked in the head, right? That if these people are likely to go and get drugs, these are also probably the more likely people to go out and shoot schools as well, right? Just because they're on a psychiatric drug doesn't necessarily mean that that's the reason why they're going out and shooting these schools up.
No, I don't think that could be a reason behind every single one of them. But here we are, we go, okay, guns are bad. All right, we're blaming a tool, but we're not able to sit down. We're not willing to go, well, what are some of the other factors that led to this point?
We can absolutely talk about the other factors, but the thing is that a lot of these factors are shared with other countries that don't have the same levels of mass shootings that the United States has. It seems that the amount of firearms available in the United States is our kind of unique variable that allows people to be so destructive. In other countries, if you're feeling really fucked in the head, maybe you grab a knife and go try to stab people. In the United States, you get a gun and you shoot as many people as you can. That seems to be a huge problem.
But we have more people prescribed drugs in America. I mean, it's like we hand them out like it's candy. You know, you have these parents that are so busy playing video games at home. They're so busy, obsessed with their own lives, and their kids sit off in the corner. They give them video games where they go around and kill people all day. They get points for murdering people. They get points for raping people. Society has changed overall.
There's never been any study that has ever linked violence to video game related stuff ever. I've never seen that. And that's been like pretty extensively studied. I don't think that's ever been linked to any type of research has ever shown that.
But we can't investigate every single person out there. I guarantee you it has.
Well, you don't investigate every single person.
Because you start separating things from it. You start looking at it as this fantasy world. You take away that human emotion of most people who've never seen any kind of violence like that. When they see a violent act, they're horrified, they're petrified. But people who sit around and they watch these movies, they play these games, they become desensitized over time, and then that coped with being over medications. It's like they're not really thinking about it.
People watch these movies and play these games all over the world and don't go out and kill people like they do in the United States.
So I looked that one up as well. I'm gonna be fair here. American Psychological Association, the APA reviews, it says they find insufficient research to link violent video game play to criminal violence. So that's what their link is. I guess I would sort of agree with Destiny on that point. I don't think video games cause people to be violent. I think possibly in some cases, but according to the American Psychological Association, it doesn't seem to be a big factor. But I want to keep moving on from this point, and I think the main thing Joe is saying here, and I want you to respond, Destiny, is like, I think he's pointing out, guns don't kill people. It's not the gun that's killing people. We have to look at the person, and he's pointed out, mental illness. He's pointed out prescription drugs and different activities that are getting young people aggressive, and they're not in good homes and all that. So what do you say to that argument that he's saying, look, it's obviously, yes, guns are powerful. He's been in the military and he knows that, but it's not the gun itself that is hurting people. It is those individuals that are messed up in the head.
This is like classic, like whataboutism, and then pivoting to other topics, like and false dilemmas, like all rolled into one. I think that we absolutely can do a lot more in the United States for things related to mental health, for things related to keeping families together, for things related to keeping education facilities functioning in a better way, right? More extracurricular programs and after-school stuff. I don't disagree with any of that. I don't think anybody would disagree with any of that. But we can't sit here and pretend that guns are a non-issue when the United States is the only country that has this problem and has a lot of things in common with other countries that don't have these problems. For every issue you bring up, maybe we have a few more mentally ill people in the United States, sure. Maybe we prescribe some more drugs in the US than in other countries, sure. But none of these like tiny things are explaining the massive discrepancy in gun violence that exists in the United States compared to these other countries. We have a unique problem in the US and it's related to gun violence, and the gun is the lone variable there that seems to explain most of the people that die to guns.
What's the difference between a gun being used for hunting versus a gun being used for mass shooting? It's the person. What's the difference between a truck being used as a mode of transportation versus a vehicle being used to run into a crowd full of people at a parade? The person. It's a people issue. It's not a gun issue. It's a fucking tool. The people are the issue that we have to look at. So it's not gun control. It's not banning guns. It's not doing this and that. It's looking at the individuals, at the people.
Okay, so cars are used for a lot of things in society. Guns, 99% of the time, are used recreationally.
But you can understand. You understand what I'm saying, though, right?
No, it's a bogus argument. This would be like me saying.
No, it's not.
Yeah, this would be like me saying there should be no speed limits in the United States because speeding can't kill somebody, and it can't. If you're going fast, that doesn't cause an accident. Now, losing control, losing traction, driving, for unsafe weather conditions, turning too quickly.
Yes,
these are things that cause accidents. But if
there's a fucking person behind that goddamn gun, right?
Okay.
So I can take this gun and I can use it to kill somebody, or I can have it on my fucking side and I could choose not to shoot somebody. I could be there as a sheepdog to make sure other people aren't hurt. I can get in the behind the wheel of my vehicle and I can drive it down the road and make a left turn and a right turn. I can turn on my turning signal, or I can decide, hey, I'm going to drive into this fucking crowd of people. So the only difference is it's not the fucking tool, it's the person using it.
These same people exist all across.
My wife is here. I have to let her in. I'll be right back.
All right. Go ahead, Destiny.
Just gotta open up the studio and let her in real quick. Hold on.
All right, no worries. Go ahead, Destiny.
Well, I gotta wait for him to come back, right?
Okay, wait for him to come back. Here, I'll read a couple of these super chats.
Super chat.
Rev up those super chats. All right. Destiny's dumb opinions are not his fault. He grew up in a home with lead paint.
Nice.
Ooh. Is that true?
I don't think so, but who knows?
All right. Someone else said, terroristic threats are felonies in the vast majority of states and not that hard to get a conviction. Baked asked Destiny, why is he using statistics that include suicides and citing them as homicides?
I haven't used a single statistic that includes suicide. The guy that just donated has no idea what he's talking about. If I was including suicides, then I would be citing 30,000 deaths a year, not 8 to 10,000 deaths a year.
Okay, let me finish that super chat. He said, when suicides are removed, the U.S. is better than most of the world.
That's just not true.
Okay, so what can you say your stats again as far as...
I think it's like something like 30 to 35,000 people a year are killed with firearms in the United States. The homicide rate is like 8 to 12,000, I think, are killed per year. I've never cited including the suicide rate, although I think you can. I think that's valid, but I'm not even going to try to have that argument right now. But I'm only talking homicides, which is like around like 10,000 a year, I think.
Right. Okay, so why don't we go back to Joe's point?
Yeah, so this comparison of guns to vehicles is like totally nonsensical because vehicles are used for a whole bunch of things in society. If you were to remove all the vehicles from society, you would destroy like the common society. It wouldn't function. People wouldn't be able to get to work or get their kids to school, or everything would just completely and totally be destroyed. Firearms have a pretty unique purpose. You said it, hunting and killing people. Both of those are killing things. I don't think that people use guns in the same way that we use cars, or that they have anywhere near the same economic impact. And then also the idea that it's not the tool, it's the person. Well, tools help people do things, right? You have all these types of people that exist all over the world. I don't think Americans are especially violent, like intrinsically violent compared to other people, but we have guns, so we're able to kill ourselves way better than other people are able to, which I think is a problem.
What was it, like 130 people were stabbed in China on a train, with a fucking knife.
Okay, one time. What does that have to do with it?
But I'm saying that people will find that. That has a very good point.
You're lying.
That has a very good point.
You're lying. You keep saying people will find a way, but they don't in other countries.
People will find something.
They don't. Nobody's gonna find a way to take a knife and stab 500 people in Las Vegas. It's not gonna happen.
People, but yeah, because there's people with fucking guns in America. That'd be stupid.
Well, all the people with the guns in America haven't seemed to help anybody so far.
I would say that's kind of a big negative if you look at the shooting at the church here in Texas.
Cool, and I would say that's kind of a big positive when you look at how many people died to guns in the United States. Sure, maybe some people stopped shootings from happening, but it's a huge problem in the U.S. that a ton of people still died to guns.
Okay, and it's going to happen because bad people exist.
Bad people exist in other countries.
Yes.
It's the guns that let people kill people.
But they're doing other stuff. They're driving fucking vehicles into people.
But not as much as we kill each other with guns. There aren't truck attacks every day in Europe.
You can't have guns. They still go into a theater and gun people down.
But they don't have as many people die from their violent people. A violent person in the United States is able to kill way more people than a violent person in Europe because they have access.
And how could we stop that? Take away gun-free zones.
So more guns. So when we look at all the rest of the, so when we look at all the West, so all the other parts of Europe that don't have guns.
Every situation with a gun on my side.
What are you going to do in a school? What are you going to do in a school when a teacher steps into a hallway to get rid of a student that's being violent and accidentally shoots and kills another student that wasn't one holding a gun? What are you going to do when a kid gets a...
You act like we're just going to hand out fucking guns like it's candy. There's a responsibility behind it. What we have to do is stop acting like it's a taboo thing to talk about in schools and start talking about guns. Learn the guns. Respect the gun. Fear the gun. Have smart parents that will teach you about the gun. Have the school talk about it. Teach people first aid. Stop being sheep led to the slaughter and be fucking sheepdog, Roger.
I don't think you should have to be a sheepdog or a warrior, a Taliban ISIS fighter to go to second grade and survive your day-to-day classes. That's insane. I mean,
more people with guns works every fucking time.
It doesn't in the United States. It seems like it fails every fucking year. If we look at the numbers, every single year, more people are killed in the United States than across the entire continent of Europe. It doesn't seem like it's working.
You know, we were talking about the school shootings and all that. Aren't, you know, pretty much all schools, I believe, are gun-free zones, right?
Sure.
Not all.
Not all.
Well, I know, like in the University of Texas, I think you can like carry guns on campus. I think you can conceal carry.
Yep.
Yeah, I wonder if someone could see if there's any statistics on like the schools that you're allowed to carry guns versus the gun-free zones, if there's a correlation between the violence. Real quick, I want to read a super chat. Someone said, rifles account for less than 10% of all gun murders.
Yeah,
more people are killed by knives, blunt objects, and bare hands in the U.S. each year than are killed by rifles, according to the official FBI statistics on homicide.
Yeah, we've already said that, and it's less than 10%. Okay. It's probably closer to 5%.
Right. Okay. Go on.
I don't know who was making a point. I feel like the idea that every other country has way less guns than us and way less homicide. The United States has way more guns than everybody else and way more homicide. And our solution is to have more guns. That just seems to be moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, but if it says that violent crime is drastically dropping, you know, right now things are getting better, statistically speaking. You know, so this whole like, hey, let's make a change. You don't fix something that's broke or that isn't broke. You don't go in and change them. So right now, if everything's drastically dropping right now, then why would we go in and throw in something to
You're comparing us to ourselves. We're the retarded kid in class who was getting 40% Fs in all of our grades on all of our classes, and now we're getting 65% Fs in all of our classes, while everybody else in school is getting 90s, A's, and B's. And you're saying, well, look, we're getting 60%. Why do we want to change anything? Let's keep failing in every conceivable way. Yes, violent crime is dropping relative to our own previous homicide rates, but we're still appalling when you compare us to the rest of the Western world that doesn't have the problems that we do here with gun violence.
Joe?
Oh, it cut out. I didn't even hear anything for a minute.
Oh, okay. Repeat that last part, Destiny.
We're comparing our violent crime relative to our own violent crime, which has been dropping. But it's like saying that a kid that gets 40% in school, who's getting like 60% now, compared to the rest of the class that's been getting A's and B's the entire time, that this kid is doing fine because he's doing way better than he used to be doing. So we're just going to leave him alone and let him continue to fail every class. Like, it doesn't make any sense. We have a unique problem with guns. Even though it's been improving, we still have a unique problem with homicides related to guns that's unique compared to every other Western country in the world that we would consider ourselves comparable to.
I mean, I can just tell you, man, an armed society is a fucking polite society.
Cool, and the data proves you wrong. This is your feeling. I don't care about how you feel.
But I'm saying we don't have the ability to do that right now. We can see the gun-free zones aren't working, right? Because
not in Europe. They seem to be doing a lot better than in the United States.
Let's look at America. This is America. This is where we live.
Okay, and in America, people are telling me that I need to send my kid to school in a fucking Kevlar backpack. That's fucking insane, dude.
It is fucking insane.
I don't want to do that. You guys get on the radio. You make fun of fucking ISIS training kids to be soldiers and killing people when they're 9 years old, and you want to do that to my 6 or 7 year old son. You want to tell him that he needs to take fucking Krav Maga so that he can disarm an AR-15 shooter in his fucking, like, going between recess and PE? That shit is insane. Or that a bunch of kids are in a classroom and, like, Miss Johnson is like, hey, kids.
Why would you want your kid to walk around like a weak person? You want our children.
It's not about walking around like a weak person. It's about having a reasonable expectation that my kid should be able to go to school and it not be a fucking war zone. I don't want my kid, I don't want to say, what did you do in class today? And he's like, oh, well, you know, Miss Johnson had to go get the fucking Glock out of the closet because Susie was acting up in gym again and she had to fucking dome her to get her out of the class because she was about to go crazy. Like, I don't want to hear this shit going on at my school. Like, it's insane. I don't know how only Americans can think this is reasonable, that our teachers need to fucking suit up and John Wick their way down the halls and kill, like, other students that are shooting up that shit. Like, this should sound insane to you. I can't believe that I even have to, like, give an explanation for how fucking crazy this is.
Destiny, I have to ask you one thing. So, you think it's crazy that people need guns to protect themselves? And before this debate, I was actually sent a video of you grabbing a gun because there was a spooky noise in your house. So why do you think that you're entitled to own a gun and protect yourself with a gun, but other people aren't?
I like firearms. I think they're really cool, and I've never said that I don't think people should be allowed to have firearms. I love firearms. This is why I'm against blanket weapon bans.
You just said you don't want to live in a world where kids or teachers or people in schools need to use firearms. So why should you?
Okay, hold on. What is contradictory between me saying I think people should be allowed to own firearms and I don't want teachers to have to own firearms to prevent mass executions in schools?
Well, why are you better than the teacher? Why are you more qualified than a school teacher who's watching over the lives of precious children?
Because
the teacher reason, like, celebrities can have guns, they can have armed guards, the same reason our politicians can have.
Come on, celebrities and politicians.
They can have walls and we can't.
Celebrities and politicians are the types of people that have a reasonable expectation that they will be targeted by other people for violent activities. Children in schools should not have that expectation.
But they are. It doesn't matter about the expectation.
Okay, they are, but only in America. So we have a problem that is unique to us that we need to fix. I don't think it's fair to say that some guy that has 10 million fans or whatever, well, he's got security. Of course he's got security. When you're that big, you're always going to attract some number of people that are trying to fucking kill you. It's just the inevitability of being that huge. But that shouldn't apply to every single school kid in the United States. I mean, there are people that are probably targeting celebrities all over the world. There aren't people that are shooting kids in schools all over the world. That's just an American thing. And also, I own a firearm as a private citizen because it's something that I enjoy doing. I like shooting my rifle, I like shooting my gun, but it's in the capacity of a private citizen that owns a gun. I don't care if teachers own guns, but there's a huge difference between a teacher owning a gun and a teacher having a gun stocked in a classroom so that they can go down the hallways to execute other students that are, like, mass shooting people. This is a totally different thing.
Well, let's just pretend. Well, then I guess we'll just pretend that that's not happening. Sorry, teachers, you can't have a gun. We can't overnight change the environment we live in. We can't change the society that's been created over time. Right now, we do live in a world where this type of stuff happens. We live in a country where this type of stuff happens. We can live in lefty fantasy la la land where everyone has unicorns and rainbows and shit like that. We can blink our eyes and exist somewhere else where that doesn't happen. But that's not the case. We are going to wake up tomorrow in an area where there's another person just like Nicholas Cruz who's fucking psychotic, who's planning something, is going to do something. So I'd feel safer as a parent, I have a daughter, to send my kid into a school if that school has the proper training and the proper firearms instruction and the know-how of fucking first aid and things like that, and post those people out there. I think the Broward County Sheriff did a great job by saying, hey, we're going to train these police officers. We're going to give them all the training they need to put them out there and post them up to make sure that nothing happens. And it doesn't have to happen for a long time. Who knows how long it would happen for? But it's going to make people think about or rethink whether or not they're going to go and carry something out like that. Like, why is that such a bad idea to put armed security out there at the school? Yeah, it sucks that we have to do that, but this is where we live. This is how it is. If
somebody's basement was flooded up to their waist, okay? And the person goes downstairs and is like, yo, my basement is flooded. This is fucked up. I need to fix this. You wouldn't tell the person, stop living in liberal la la land. Go get some undergarments and get some like rubber pants and boots so that you can wade through your basement that's flooded with water and learn to deal with it, you liberal fucking cuck. Like, you're such a little liberal pansy. No, you would tell the person, okay, do what you need to do now to protect yourself, but you need to drain your fucking basement. You wouldn't live with your basement. No. You wouldn't.
One person's home.
This is something specific to the United States of America.
Where goddamn shootings are going to happen, you fucking retard.
But it's the only country where it happens, Joe.
You want kids to go out there without the fucking protection. It doesn't matter. This is the country we live in, so we have to talk about what the fuck's happening in this goddamn country.
So we need to fix it. We need to fix it. That's great.
I don't care what's happening in fucking Wakanda.
That's because you want to live in conservative fantasy land, where fucking Chuck Norris is stationed outside every fucking classroom to roundhouse kick people like everybody's gonna be a fucking hero. You think a teacher that gets paid $35 a year is gonna go risk their fucking life to kill some kid with a rifle in the hallway? Fuck that shit. Come on, man. This is not realistic. Like, can we talk about more security at schools? Sure, that would be a great idea, but we have to fix this problem that is very unique to the United States, and we can't pretend that there are no solutions. We're the only country on the planet that comparable to other countries that deals with this shit, okay? So we need to figure out how to make it stop.
Yeah, but everybody who bitches about this all the time, everybody brings a problem to the table, but they don't bring a fucking solution. So
I just gave you 5 of them.
No, but they're not good because you're acting like this is just going to happen.
No, I'm not, Joe. This is a difficult problem that's going to have difficult solutions. We need to open it up to research. We need to pilot a bunch of programs to see what works. You're living in this world where we exist in an environment right now.
You live in Wakanda, dude. I live in America, man.
Right, I live in America just as much as anyone else, okay? Listen, we have a problem right now. If I can't give you the perfect fucking solution, we're not allowed to try anything at all. That's ridiculous. What we have right now is not acceptable. Just because I can't give you the 100% surefire way of stopping the homicides in the United States from gun violence doesn't mean we can't try anything at all. And maybe if we open up the CDC to study more gun violence and gun-related crimes, maybe we can figure out better solutions for ways to fix these problems.
Well, let's look at what's defined as a school shooting, too. And this is done by everytownresearch.org. Defines a school shooting as any time a firearm discharges around, inside, or into a school building or onto a school campus or grounds as documented by the press. And when necessary, confirmed by law enforcement. So when you see these statistics and you see that, oh my God, this is happening all the time. These mass shootings are crazy. It's happening all the time. No. If a fucking jackass drives his car in or around a school and shoots himself in the head, that's a school shooting compared to these people by leftists.
Are you trying to say that you can just hand wave all the school shootings that happen in the U.S. off because some of the statistics might be a little bit inflated because of this? Is that
it says right here 290 school shootings in America since 2013. That's fucking horseshit. Because if you look at their fucking definition of this, it says anytime a firearm discharges a live round inside or into a school building or onto a school. So that means there could be a gang fucking fight across the street and a stray bullet hits the building. That's considered a school shooting.
Okay, so maybe we take away those and the real number is just 100 mass school shootings since 2013. Is that better? Would that make you happier? Is that an acceptable number to you?
But that could still be fucking stopped by putting armed security out there.
There were 2 armed security guards at the fucking school, Joe. They didn't do anything.
Crazy people take advantage.
There were 2 armed guards at the school. They didn't do anything.
Crazy people take advantage.
Crazy people exist all over the world, but the United States is the only one where they kill people in schools.
Okay,
you don't see a 5'8" rapist trying to rape China. That's
regarding the school shootings.
The gun is the great equalizer. The gun is the great equalizer.
Let me read this super chat real quick. Then I'll get back to you guys. Soren 305 said only 160 school shooting deaths since 2010. This is overblown. Only roughly 200,000 gun homicides since 1999, which is 0.04% of our yearly deaths. This is a perfectly reasonable trade-off for freedom.
I mean, I disagree. When owning firearms is a recreational thing, and I don't think that when we have to arm every single person in a school, I don't think this is a reasonable trade-off. I could accept reasonable trade-offs in other areas.
Would you be willing to give up your gun, Destiny, if it meant that people would be more safe? Would you give up your gun?
I really wouldn't want to, and I don't think the types of things that I advocate for. Well, I'm not arguing to take guns away from everybody, Alaska. That's not what I want. What I want are targeted things that find. So I'm never in favor of banning a particular type of gun. I would never say we need to ban assault rifles, whatever the fuck that means, or ban AR-15s, or ban semi-automatic rifles, 30-round magazine, whatever. I've never been in favor of that. What I've been in favor of is we need to find out what types of people commit crimes, and how do we prevent these types of people from getting firearms. I've never been in favor of blanket bans on firearms. Okay. All right.
So can you just? I would like you to be more specific. Joe's been pretty specific. You got to be more specific with what. I mean, do you want background checks? You sort of at the beginning said there's this problem, but you don't really know the solution, and it's.
I've listed several. Like, here's another one related to the mental health thing, for instance. If you've been, go ahead.
Can you just say what are actual solutions that you can say, not things like, oh, we need to figure it out, we need like tell me right now, like background checks, like
okay, so here's I mean, I've already mentioned specifically maybe people that committed gun-related misdemeanor crimes, which don't prevent you from getting guns. Maybe that's something that needs to happen. I'm pretty sure I listed the FBI that can put you on a no-fly list but can't put you on a no-gun list. Maybe that's something that needs to happen. Now, that process would have to be opened up because there is no like appeals process. There's no due process for FBI no-fly list up. So I know there's issues with that, of course. Here's a specific thing, another specific thing, because I have listed some. If you are committed to a mental institution, that precludes you from purchasing a firearm. However, if you have severe mental problems but you are not committed, you are still able to purchase a firearm. Right now, if you go to like some sort of therapist or a mental health advisor or whatever, if you are an imminent threat to another person, they have an obligation to inform authorities, despite the fact that you've got like patient confidentiality. So for instance, if I go to my therapist and I say, listen, I'm really going to go home and kill my family tonight, even though you have confidentiality, that therapist will still contact the police and let them know what's going on. Maybe some type of similar thing needs to be made for people that are severely mentally ill. Say you've got a guy that is showing tendencies that are very much in line with people that would acquire a firearm to commit mass shootings. Maybe they should be able to recommend people to additional screening or some sort of preclusion from obtaining firearm as well. The reason why I don't know exactly what the answers are is because the way that you would go about studying this, I imagine, is you would create a profile of a mass shooter. You would retroactively apply this to all other mass shooters. You would see how accurate it works and how many people you catch in that net. And then these are the types of solutions that you would recommend for saying that like these types of people shouldn't be allowed to acquire firearms. Again, if the CDC was allowed to actually publicly study this stuff and make recommendations, I could probably have even more specific recommendations for you. But I think that these are probably better paths forward than we need to have every single teacher with a gun and every single kid with a Kevlar backpack and, you know, 55 Green Berets and Navy SEALs stationed, you know, inside every single school when we're already struggling to fund our schools. We don't even know where this money is going to come from.
Okay. So someone, the chat's saying you just admitted you had a therapist.
I don't think so.
Okay. Someone said, I support laws preventing nuts like Destiny from access to guns when they make homicidal threats like Destiny did to that kid and his family. Nice. I'm not sure what they're talking about, but I think the question is, like, you know, some people might think you're a nut, and you might think
it's not about some people. It's about mental health professionals. This isn't just like, you know, Uncle Betty or Aunt Betty.
That sounds similar to what Joe was saying.
From what I've learned tonight is other countries that are mostly white are not very violent compared to a lot of these countries, or to America, where it's a very diverse group of people that are coming here and they're carrying out stuff. So now because of that, we got to ban guns, and little Timmy has to walk into school unprotected because, you know, we all know that criminals follow signs that says gun free zone. They see it and they go, oh shit, I better disarm myself. Darn, I can't do it.
Can you guys hear me right now? I mean, is this working?
Yeah.
No, it's not working at all.
Wait.
It just keeps coming out as fuck.
Oh, yeah, okay. Is there a fourth person in this call?
No.
Oh, because I just heard Joe say that people are saying we need to ban guns. I don't remember anybody saying that. I was just saying that there's someone else in here that wasn't connected or something.
No,
keep going.
There's just three of us.
Overall conversation. I'm saying in the overall conversation, people say that.
Oh, well, okay, well, I mean, why would I be brought here if you're just going to speak to the overall conversation? I mean, I can bring up some of the.
That's what I want to do.
Oh, okay.
You don't support freedom of speech?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about very specific measures that can be taken to possibly prevent people from killing more people in schools in the future. I'm not talking about banning all guns. I think I've explicitly said multiple times that I'm not even in favor of banning particular types of guns. But yeah, I don't know how many other clear ways I could say that.
All right, so I'm seeing this in the chat a lot. Basically, so I hear what you're saying, Destiny, and I think you do have some good ideas. So say you come up with this great law that is going to restrict some sort of access to guns. And
law-abiding citizens.
Right. So how Destiny, how would you ensure that these people, these crazy people or violent people, you know, how are they going to listen to these new laws? Because to me, I mean, you can look at the drug epidemic, the heroin epidemic, you know, people are still getting heroin. If you're going to make these restrictions on who can get guns, I feel like people are still going to be able to get guns. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, this most recent shooting was done with a legally purchased gun. I don't have the stats offhand, but you'd have to find out how many school shootings are done with legally acquired firearms. And then that would tell you immediately, like, what percentage of people would at the very least have to jump through another hurdle to get a firearm, right? Because if it's illegal now, you can't just go to the store and buy it like the Florida shooter kid did. But right. I mean, making it illegal or precluding certain people from buying them via certain legislation or like more kind of provisions or whatever isn't the only way to combat this as well. We have a huge amount of guns in the United States. We have more guns per capita in the U.S. than any other country in the world. Over 350 firearms exist here. This is why earlier I also said...
I got about 15 of them in my house right now, or in my studio, I mean.
Nice. This is why I said... maybe gun buybacks or something might be an option too. You have like a gun amnesty, gun buyback thing, where you allow people to just bring them in and no questions asked. You give a few $100 or whatever for certain firearms. Maybe that helps get them off the streets. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if it's been tried that much in the United States before. I know San Diego's done it at least once to some level of success.
Well, the homicides in Australia, if you look at the homicide rate in Australia, it did not decrease after the '96 buyback, and you can look that up as well.
I know those numbers, and it did decrease. You're absolutely wrong. I know for a fact that it. You can bring them up on stream if you want. I know they decreased.
Do you have statistics?
No, but you can Google. You can Google it right now on stream. You can bring the images. I'm very familiar with these stats, and that's not true.
Here, let's do this. You can Google.
Well, I mean,
you can fucking Google it. Let's Google.
Well, no, hold on.
Gun violence statistics. It'll come up CNN, BBC. It'll be all this leftist fucking shit.
Oh, come on, dude. Fuck off. When I bring up real data, it hurts your feelings, so you have to say all of it is fake. It is.
I'm just saying.
You're in tears right now. It's not fair. The data lies. I know the truth. You know, Breitbart told me what to think. Like the level of homicides dropped in Australia, whether you like it or not, whether that hurts your feelings or not, or makes you cry at night. I don't really give a fuck. Homicides dropped in Australia when the gun buyback and the gun ban after Port Arthur happened, and there were no more mass shootings in that country after it happened either. Now, mass shootings are pretty rare. I personally don't go as far as to say those two things are causally linked, but that is fact. I don't know what fiction you want to push that says that the amount of gun violence didn't change, but
if someone has the stats, send them to me.
The chart that I have.
All right, cool. Let me check this out. Yeah, so I'm looking here, homicides in Australia.
Are we looking at non-gun homicides? Are we going to pivot again, or?
12 victims were within the building. Two victims are.
This just says homicides. It doesn't specifically say anything about gun facts, so I'll give that to you, Destiny. I mean, it doesn't say anything specifically about guns. But it does show that the homicide rate is about the same.
Okay, well, for gun-related violence, for gun killings in Australia, after the gun buyback happened, gun homicides dropped, and they have not experienced another mass shooting yet. I know those two things are true. I've seen these numbers a million times because I argue about them all the time on stream. So I know these two things are true.
What would you say about... I want to move on from this. So... You said this stops violence in other countries. So
I'm saying that other countries don't have the type of violence that we do. It's hard to find comparable people that have enacted this type of gun legislation, like buybacks and stuff, because most people don't have the number of firearms that we do. Australia's the only one I could think of that's comparable. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think you and Joe disagree on that. I think you've both stated that yes, there is a lot of there is a significant amount of gun violence in the U.S. I want to show this on the screen real quick. Like, what would you say about the UK, for instance? After they banned guns, their knife attacks rose by 23% in the capital, and there was actually over almost 40,000 knife offenses only up to September 2017. So that means it probably rose over 40,000 compared to 6,600 gun offenses in the year. So.
This isn't in response to like a banning of guns, though. and crime is still down. I think this is their highest rate in 6 years.
Well, I think they've been pushing gun control laws pretty hard in the UK.
They always have in the UK, though. This isn't something that's changed recently. It's not like
right. So why is the rate of knife attacks just dramatically rising?
I don't know. Violence in the United States has been rising over the past 2 years, but the overall trend is still very much going down. I just don't think this is related much. It's not like the UK had like they banned all guns and then everybody started knifing each other. There's just been an uptick in crime in the United Kingdom.
I think you said something earlier like, oh, if they don't have guns, they're not just going to be able to stab everyone. And so I was using.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you don't have access to a firearm, it's harder to inflict as much damage as you can with a firearm. This is why you use firearms, right? If you want to kill as many people.
There's still 40,000 knife attacks going on in the UK last year.
Sure, but would you rather have 40,000 knife attacks or 40,000 firearm attacks? Which one do you think is more lethal?
If I'm going to go out, I'd go out with a gun, honestly. I don't want to.
I'd rather be shot than fucking stabbed. That's way more painful.
Yeah.
No. What? Okay.
How many times have you been stabbed?
I don't know of people that go out and stab hundreds of people when they go out to do mass killings. And again, like... What you're saying is very disingenuous, especially if you have combat experience. You are never being deployed with a fucking knife in a war zone. It doesn't happen. Yes. I don't know why you...
have a knife.
Okay, maybe on your side, but that's not what you walk into battle with. You have your rifle with you. You got, what is it, M4s?
It depends. It depends on the situation, where you're at. If you're going to be indoors, can you make noise? Can you not make noise? By you making noise and shooting a gun, would that then alert a lot of people that you're surrounded by and highly outnumbered? You would have to use a knife. So knives are used in combat.
I can't play this game with you. I don't if this is like what you really want to do, to pretend that rifles aren't insanely more effective at killing multiple targets as compared to a knife. Like, this isn't really an argument that any reasonable person would disagree with. So if you had to choose between 40,000 knife attacks or 40,000 rifle attacks, 99% of the time you would take the knife attacks. Like, yeah, there are some scenarios where knives might be better in close quarter combat. It's better to have a knife than a rifle. If you're a secret agent, I guess James Bond doesn't want to alert somebody else to their presence, then maybe. But I'm pretty sure that like most of the people in Las Vegas probably would have preferred that guy to be throwing knives out of the window than having 15 rifles in his room. I'm pretty sure most people in school shootings would rather a guy running down a hallway with a knife, or people in malls that go on shootings, right? But
Keeps cutting out.
Keeps cutting out. I can hear him. I can hear him here. All right. So, what other points do you disagree with Joe on, Destiny?
I mean, I just want less people to die in the United States from gun shit. That's like that would be like a cool thing, I think. And every time you try to have this conversation, Republicans always pivot to this like insanely dishonest territory where it's like, well, what about truck attacks? Or, you know, if you can't give me the perfect be-all and end-all solution, then your solution is bullshit, and now we need to give everybody guns. Like, I don't know, I hate that narrative. It's so frustrating that anytime you try to have a conversation about gun-related stuff, people get so emotional and like act like any type of restriction whatsoever is going to destroy the United States and your ability to fight tyranny in the government or whatever. I don't know, it's just really, really, really frustrating.
So when a Democrat was president, I mean, I didn't really see much getting done about the gun violence problem either.
Nope.
I'm pretty sure the Democrats only held Congress for 2 years while Obama was in office, and I think that their main political agenda was getting through the Affordable Care Act.
Well, he can do, his presidential executive orders, though, right?
In an executive order that would give some sort of federal mandate related to guns, that sounds like a huge no-no. There's a reason why we have so few federal restrictions on firearms, because the Second Amendment is pretty unambiguous in its wording. I don't think the president could enact some sort of federal restriction on who can buy firearms via executive action. That sounds like a huge no-no waiting to happen.
Right. Would you be cool, Destiny? We had a guy who wants to ask you a couple questions. Is that okay?
I need to know the name because fuck these people.
Vince from the Red Elephants. He wanted to ask you.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. As long as it's not, somebody in here.
Okay, cool. And then also James Alsop had a question. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's not like
Tonka or Andy Warski or some fucking.
No, you're not gonna. Some guy's not gonna. The Kool-Aid Man's not gonna jump through the wall.
Okay, thanks.
All right, cool. So we're going to have real quick, James Alsop is going to join. He has a quick question, And also Vincent from the Red Elephants has a quick question for Mr. Destiny. Let me read some of these super chats while we are waiting. And thank you guys both for being here. This has been fun. Destiny, 40k knife attacks versus 40k gun attacks dichotomy is the same as asking, what's heavier, 1 kilogram of bricks or 1 kilogram of feathers?
What? No, it's not. It's like asking what weighs more, 40,000 feathers or 40,000 bars of steel. That he chose the worst possible example because it proves my point. But okay.
Okay. Capable Guardian here said, is it easier for women to defend themselves with a gun or a knife?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I'm not actually sure what the answer to that. I think Joe would know this better than I would, but I think in closed quarters combat, you usually want a knife because it's easier to inflict wounds. The person can't wrestle it away from you as easy. So, but women are also a lot weaker, so I'm not entirely sure. And well,
Right.
and I imagine most attacks against women probably happen in close quarters. So yeah, I don't know what the correct answer is there.
But but like I said, man, the gun is a great equalizer. So if you have a smaller, weaker girl with a gun, she is now 6'8", 220 pounds. If she knows how to use that gun, she can now be equal to that guy. Even Howard Stern agrees with that. I mean, and he's a hardcore liberal. He believes that the gun is the great equalizer. So I mean, you take a 90-year-old grandma, if she's been shooting her whole life, she is just as much of a threat as that individual who's trying to mug her, attack her like that. And that's just my belief on that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Destiny, you know, I want you to be honest here. I think you do find value in owning firearms, obviously, since you own a firearm. So that's, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's value, but it's recreational. Like, I mean, I'll sit here and bullshit, you know, that I own them for protection, you know. And if I'm concealed carrying in public, I mean, it's probably a valid protection thing because I actually have access to it. But when it's in my house, you know, I have to keep it locked up so that my kid doesn't you know, get it and kill himself or something. And I don't know Or sorry, go ahead.
You're a public figure, and you have like an incredible amount of trolls, people harassing you. I don't think it's unreasonable at all for you to have a gun.
Sure, but again, like in a real life combat situation, like it's hard to say how anybody is going to act. You know, like a lot of times people will fantasize, you know, about like, oh, you know, if I spotted the intruder, you know, I would draw my firearm, I would sight him up very easily, 3 rounds to the chest, 1 to the head, it would be perfect. Like in a real life situation, so, you know, it's better to make it so that we don't have to deal with this stuff at all, right? That like the best, in anybody that's taken classes for firearms or taken any training related to a firearm, if you're not law enforcement, right, your goal is to always de-escalate and retreat. It's never to, you know, get into a situation where you can shoot, you know, as quickly as possible. It's de-escalate the situation and retreat from any environment where you're going to be using it as much as you can until you're not able to anymore, right? And then you have to fire as a last resort.
Right, for sure. Okay, so real quick, we have Vincent from the Red Elephants. He has a question or 2 for you. Go ahead, Vincent.
Right. I take a different approach to this, and I've spoken about this on many different videos on my channel. And right there, I think I saw Destiny pivot when you guys proved that the homicide rate stayed increased. And in a few different years since the 1996 mandatory gun buyback program in Australia, which was just focused on mainly only the semi-automatic rifles, the homicide rate did stay the same, pretty much stagnant. In some years, it even increased, which means, to Joe's perspective, it is correct that it is the person. They found other ways to kill each other there. They literally found other ways to kill each other. So if you saved 0 lives, if you decreased the homicide rate by nothing, if you didn't decrease the homicide rate at all in Australia after the mandatory gun buyback program, then that means they found other ways to kill each other, and it is the person. Not to mention, this is a fact, and you can look this up, more guns are privately owned now in Australia since the 1996 mandatory gun buyback program. And I feel it's important to mention that it was only focused on semi-automatic rifles, much like the AR-15 that we talk about here today. And I heard that you are not opposed at all, Destiny, to or you are opposed to banning certain types of weapons. Is that correct? You're opposed to banning the AR-15?
I don't like bans for a lot of reasons, but mainly because I don't think that law-abiding citizens, as much as possible, should be restricted from purchasing certain firearms.
And I'm not one of those Republicans. I'm not even a Republican,
real quick,
actually.
Before we move on,
consider myself a Republican.
Yes,
I'm not one of those.
Can I real quick?
Yeah, let Destiny talk.
Yeah, just real quick before we address this, because I'm not familiar with these stats, and I hate it when people like bring.
Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not
Okay.
one of those conservatives, Destiny, that's going to go off and say, "Oh, you can kill people with knives, you can kill people with trucks and things like that." I look at the statistics, and whether you want to agree with this or not, you always say the CDC. This is a talking point, a common talking point amongst the left. Oh, the CDC and the NRA's blackened gun crime statistics. The gun crime statistics are accessible. You can look at the FBI crime statistics, and you can see you always like to compare, the left always likes to compare America to other developed countries, but they also disregard the fact that those developed countries are completely homogeneous. They're almost 100% white in those countries, and if you take the murder rate by whites here in America, it's comparable to, and even sometimes less than, the murder rate by guns in those developed nations, or murder rate in general. Sorry, the murder rate in general in those developed nations. If you take just the murder rate perpetrated by whites here in America, it is on par with like Denmark and Norway, 0.6 per 100,000. And that's a fact. So those countries don't have an 18% population of Hispanics or a 13% population of blacks. And it is a fact here that 90% of the gun crimes, and I'll quote even Joe Scarborough from MSNBC here, 90% of the gun crime here that is caused in America are caused with illegally obtained firearms from the black market, smash and grab guns, stolen from gun stores, things of that nature. So, but am I opposed to a little bit more stringent background checks to make sure people with mental disorders or history of mental health, mental illnesses and things like that, like for instance, the Texas church shooter who had domestic abuse charges, he was on SSRIs, he had, all sorts of different things, shaky background. Am I opposed to tougher background checks? No, I'm okay with the process out here in California, for instance, which is pretty tough, but not as tough as Illinois. So.
All right, go ahead, Destiny.
I mean, that was like a million things. I don't have all of this data on hand. So, firstly, the thing about the Australian homicide thing is not true. So
it is true. You can look at the homicide rate.
Look at the
homicide rate from 1996. Look at 2002.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it right now. It's dropped quite a bit.
Is it
You're talking about the gun. You're talking about the gun homicide. You're talking about the gun deaths. Yes, the gun deaths.
No,
in
I'm
Australia
looking at all homicides.
Are you able to share your screen, Destiny?
Yeah, so I know what's going on here, okay? So what he's probably looking at is this data here, where it shows that the homicides have kind of stagnated and then dropped a little bit.
I don't see your screen.
Or, I'm sorry, it's not on the screen. I posted a link in chat. I don't know if I can share my screen because of my setup.
Here, I'll share my screen real quick. Yep. All right.
So when you look at something like this, it kind of looks like it wasn't very effective because the homicide rate didn't really drop that much, although it did drop. But when we look at homicide...
Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's up on the screen right now.
No, I'm not looking at that graph. I'm looking at actual specific numbers of homicides in Australia on my graph.
Okay, can you show me your graph?
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead and screen share.
Oh, and by the way, like I said, there's more privately owned guns in Australia than even before after the buyback program.
Okay, but are there more gun owners, or do just fewer people own more guns?
No, more guns. Pretty much the same owners.
Okay.
I mean, there's a few more gun owners, a few thousand more gun owners, but not anything.
Okay.
Right.
Are you linking my? Wait, hold on, because this is. Are you linking your graph or?
Bullets.
Vince, are you linking your graph? Hello? Hey, Vince, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
It's glitching out.
Destiny, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Can he text it to you, Bake, and then put it up?
Yeah.
I did. I actually did. I did.
Put it in the chat. Put it in chat.
It's not letting me. My computer's not letting me scroll.
Okay, let's see.
I can't run this, and my computer's shit.
It's okay. So I'm looking this up just on
here.
my
I don't care. I've already looked at the numbers. Okay, I just said this in 2 seconds. Okay. The problem is that what he's looking up is absolute number of homicides, but this isn't the data that we want. So if we see that homicides,
why not? You save 0 lives. Yeah, we're looking at absolute number of homicides. You're talking about lives, right? What makes the life of the guy that gets shot? There was 2,000 shootings in Chicago, for instance, in 2016. 2,000 shootings in 1 year. most of those gun deaths, most of those gun crime was perpetrated by a person with an illegally obtained firearm. What makes those lives less important than the lives of a mass school shooter? Why wouldn't you want to look at the overall homicides?
Okay.
You're looking at the.
Let's say that we have a country of 100 people, and let's say that 5 people get killed by guns. Then let's say that this country's population goes from 100 to 1,000, and now 10 people get killed by guns. Would you say that the amount of gun violence has increased in the country? Yes or no, and why?
Hello?
Hello?
Hey.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Let's say that you have a country with 100 people in the country. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Let's
Yeah.
say that 5 people get killed by guns. Let's say that that country's population grows from 100 to 1,000. And next year, 10 people get killed by guns. Would you say that the amount of gun violence in this country has increased or decreased, and why?
Well, see, you're making the per capita argument. And then I could say that per capita, more people are killed by guns in Honduras and Mexico than in the U.S.
Whoa,
and
no.
guns
We're
are a lot
comparing
harder to-
Australia before and after the gun buyback. We're not talking about cross comparisons to different. We're specifically talking about Australia before and after the gun buyback.
How much did their population increase from 1996 to 2002? I'm willing to bet not much, and the murder rate spiked. The homicide rate spiked from 1996 to 2002. If you look at
In
how many people were murdered,
1996, Australia had 18.3 million people. In
Okay.
2016, they had 24 million people.
what about 2002? Because you could see the homicide rate increased in 2002.
I don't
These are-
know, but when
these are-
I look
these
up
are-
the numbers of intentional homicides listed as in a way that makes sense, which is per 100,000 people, the homicide rate in Australia has dropped quite a bit since 2002. When I look up these numbers, not absolute numbers, the reason why
And
absolute...
our homicide rate has decreased since in 1999. They had 385 people killed. You're trying to tell me that millions of people were born in Australia from 1996 to 1999? You literally had 354 people killed in 1996, and then after the gun buyback program, just 3 years later, 385 people were killed in Australia. So does that sound like they saved lives by having a mandatory gun buyback program of semi-automatic rifles? No, it looks like it didn't save any lives.
Okay, so...
How much did the population go up in 3 years? I'm willing to bet not much.
I didn't say that the... Can you just look at my link? I posted it in chat.
Here, I'll put it up on the screen so everyone can see it. So it's the Our World in Data, right?
Yeah.
right,
It looks
so
like
it's,
there was
intentional
stagnation.
homicides.
There was stagnation from this goes back to 95. I don't know if you can get the numbers back even further. It looks like the homicide rate per capita, which is all we really care about, stagnated from 95 to 2002. But since 2002, it's been dropping pretty steadily in Australia.
Okay, okay, pull that back up again. Baked, pull that graph back up again. I don't see it anymore.
Yep, it's on the screen.
You can see that in the 2000 it spiked. So this is look at how it went up after 1995. It went down and then went back up again. And then what happened? Here, the violent crime, and a lot of university studies say that our violent crime has decreased since the 90s and the early 2000s because of the internet. Basically, a lot of university studies have quoted this. So you see how their homicide spiked for a few
This
years
is
after
great.
the buyback program. It went down the exact same time that our violent crime went down, which is when the internet came into play, right? So a lot of different technology came into play, and that's what a lot of universities, including Dartmouth, including Duke, several university studies say that our violent crime went down since the 90s because of the internet.
Okay, so I don't think anybody has said violent crime has gone down because of the internet, but if that's the argument you want to make, that's fine. But we've pivoted significantly from your earlier argument that homicides in Australia has remained the same. That's not true. That's demonstrably false.
Okay, it went down, it went up.
And then it's dropped significantly over the past 20 years.
What I'm saying is after the gun buyback program, it went up in a few years, and then it went down, and then it went up again. Then it went down, and then it went up again. Like I said, it went up. Since 1996, if you look at 1999, it went up. 2000, the murder rate went up since the gun buyback program, and then in 2002, it went up, and then it slowly.
A couple
decreased.
years isn't enough to see a trend, and there was another buyback in 2003 as well. I'm just saying that it seems like
but that buyback wasn't, like I said. The gun buyback program in 1996 was after the Port Arthur massacre that killed 35 people. That was focused strictly on semi-automatic rifles.
All right. Yeah, I don't want to. People are pointing out I don't want to dogpile Destiny too hard because it is between him and Joe. Thank you, Vince, for coming in.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Oh, by the way,
yes.
Look at Honduras and Mexico. If you want to compare the U.S. to other countries, you have to compare it to them, even if they're not undeveloped. Mexico's an OECD member, and then you cannot compare the U.S. to other developed countries because they do not have the type of demographics that we have here.
Okay,
like I
so
said, the white murder rate here is on par with those countries.
When you think of like the countries that you want to be doing better than as an American, you want to be doing better than Honduras or Mexico? That's your goal?
No, I'm just saying if you look
Then
at the murder rate by whites here, if you look at the murder rate by whites here.
What does the murder rate by whites have to do anything? Americans aren't just white.
Those are all white countries. Those are all white countries.
Okay, so are you suggesting we get rid of the non-white people, or?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay, then why are we comparing? It's not dishonest.
Yes, it is dishonest to compare America to other countries, to other developed countries that are all white. It is dishonest because if you look at the murder rate, Vermont. Let's look at Vermont for it. Vermont
as an American,
is 90% white.
As an American.
Let me just finish this talk because I'm going to get off this stream. Anyway, Vermont has permitless concealed carry. New Hampshire has permitless concealed carry. Maine has permitless concealed carry. And Idaho has permitless concealed carry. And those are the top 4 safest states in this country.
Nobody lives in those states. Nobody lives in fucking Vermont or Idaho.
Per capita. You want to make per capita. Those are the safest states in this country. They have permitless concealed carry. And they're all 90% plus white states. That is a fact. Okay, you cannot...
Nobody cares about Vermont or Idaho. There aren't massive cities here where gun violence is more likely to occur. Or I guess as you would say, black people or brown people or whatever, non-whites.
What, you think, am I lying when I say that?
No, I just don't know why you would draw the distinction unless you want to make it a race issue. When I look at you are though. You're saying that I don't want to compare the stats. I don't want to compare. You're saying I don't want to compare American gun violence. I want to compare the gun violence of black, white, and Hispanic Americans to other countries. I, as an American, aspire for the entire country to reduce its gun violence, not just white people in the United States, because I don't think Americans identify themselves by race like that. We're all Americans.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I'm completely agree. All I'm saying is you cannot make the comparison because it's not apples to apples. It's apples to oranges. Just like you said, no one lives in Vermont, even though I'm talking about per capita. Well, you can look at some of the Norse countries. They have as many people as New Jersey has, essentially. So, I mean, oh, by the way, more kids are on SSRIs per capita here than any other developed country. Are you saying you want to do better than other developed countries? I could put that argument on you all day long. You're not.
Wait, what was the argument there?
More kids here are on SSRIs than any other country per capita. More kids are on SSRIs.
I think James also had something to say.
Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead.
You can stay here, Vince, if Destiny doesn't mind. Why don't you just mute your mic for a second? James, you had a question.
Yeah, Destiny. Glad to know you've come over and seen the light of white nationalism. Congratulations, bud.
No, not at all. I said the exact opposite, but I know that to a white nationalist, it sounds like everything is pro-white nationalism, but no, I think that as Americans, we should probably all do better together.
And I like your idea that you're going to be so high-minded and ignore statistics and say, oh, I don't care about Vermont.
I'm not high and mighty because I don't want to treat black people as differently than white people. I consider that to be like a basic philosophical axiom that we treat everybody as equal.
Why are you interrupting? You're interrupting.
Chill out a little bit, bud.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
Okay, little guy. So we can look at the international homicide rate per 100,000 people from the World Bank. This is worldbank.org, and you can look. Australia, the homicide rate in Australia did fall after it actually stayed the same after 1996 with the first gun buyback. It fell after 2003, but so did the homicide rate in Austria, in the Belarus, in Belgium, in other European countries, which is actually, and those countries, by the way, did not impose gun buybacks, which is further evidence for Vince's claims, as he said, that the fall in gun violence had more to do with the spread of alternative things for people to do, like the internet. It provided people an option, and video games also provided outlets for people to do things other than commit crime. So the homicide rates are more linked to global developments and less to regional gun buybacks. We know that the gun buyback in Australia didn't actually reduce the homicide rate marginally more than it did in these other European countries. Secondly, it is not fair to compare, as Vince said, it is not fair to compare the homicide rate in America to the homicide rate in Western European and even some Central European countries because of the demographic differences. We know that in America, according to FBI Table 43 here from the FBI, blacks are 13% of the American population.
Okay, wait, so what? Just tell me what, I already know, I know where you're going. Can you just tell me what your solution is? I want to hear what your solution is.
Let him finish.
No, I
I'll
don't
tell
need
you
to
my-
hear
The
that black
solution
people
is
and,
to be
and brown
honest,
people commit
Destiny.
more homicides.
The solution is you stop lying, Destiny.
No, so tell me what your solution is. I want to hear what the solution is.
Stop lying,
I want you to tell me what your solution is. What do you think we should do about guns in the
I
United
have a
States?
solution.
We analyze gun violence. When we analyze gun violence, we do it honestly, and we compare the rates of gun violence in America on a basis that analyzes whomst is committing this gun violence.
So what do we do going
Because I'll
forward?
tell you
So
what,
give me an example of what you think we should do going forward.
I don't think we should impose any new gun regulations because any gun
Much better.
Regulations going forward will only disarm law-abiding American citizens who have every right to protect themselves and their families and protect their nation against a tyrannical government gone out of control. That is why the founders made the Constitution and made the Second Amendment the way they did. They definitely intended for Americans to have weapons that are on par with the U.S. government. These people had just rebelled against the United Kingdom. They'd rebelled against England. They
okay, I don't care about the 50 million. I don't care about this argument. Okay, so you think that?
You care about the Second Amendment? Okay.
No, not really. No, I don't look to the Constitution for my moral arguments. No, I don't.
Hold on. You just got high-minded about being an American and not seeing color and being, so
not seeing color. I didn't say that.
But now you're saying you don't care about the Second Amendment as an American, Destiny.
No, what I'm. Oh shit! Are we done with this?
You should be caring about the Second Amendment.
I know,
you are tactically American, Destiny. You're a liar.
Okay, so it's called an amendment, James. It's called an amendment because we can change it. Okay? We have the ability to do that with our Constitution. The fact that something exists in the Constitution doesn't make it an unchangeable law that you can never argue against. The whole reason why the Constitution is changeable is because the times change. The Founding Fathers knew that. That's why we have a process by which to amend our Constitution. The fact that you are citing an amendment to me as something that can never be changed is actually hilarious. Firstly, okay? Secondly, do you think that the United States gun laws right now should just continue to remain as are, that we should just accept the level of gun violence that we have in the United States?
Because they should become less strict, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well then that's how, then there's nothing else to argue.
People who legally own their firearms. Most of the gun violence is not perpetrated by people who legally own their firearms.
And it seems like other countries don't have these problems like we do. I wonder
they also
why.
Have the same demographics, Destiny. They don't have the same demographics.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's the black people and the brown people. It's the black people and the brown people.
So if it's not, why does Honduras have exponentially more gun crime than we do? And it's almost illegal to get it. It's almost
I have no fucking idea what the country of Honduras is like, but I don't hear people compare us to Honduras like they do with Germany, France, Italy, the United Kingdom. Probably because economically they're not on the same level as us. Probably because institutionally they lag behind us in a lot of different areas.
So you're saying economics causes
not just economics, economics and institutions, access to education, access to jobs, access to recreational activities.
So it's probably not the gun then.
Hey, one
the people. One at a time.
It's
economics. It's not the gun. You're saying it's economics.
Okay, so Alaska, I love you, but I'm not ready to do the do the white ethno state argument right now. So I can't like.
We're not I'm not saying anything.
Well, when like two people come on here and they're like, all the gun violence comes from black and brown people, like I'm not ready for this argument right now.
Never said that. Now you're straw manning. If you want to have an intellectual debate about something that you're talking about,
I can't have an intellectual debate with somebody that doesn't know the difference between absolute and per capita stats. Okay, so that's already off the table. So if you want to argue about black versus brown people,
debate that has that for someone who pivots from gun deaths to homicides and then from back to homicides.
I haven't pivoted anything. I'm struggling to keep you guys on point. It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Okay, but listen, you're talking about changing the gun laws when you just admitted that gun deaths and gun murders are due to economy.
I didn't say that. I said that's one of many reasons why we're probably not comparable to Honduras. Economy is one reason. There's probably a ton of other. Our education is probably different. Our culture is probably different. Our entertainment and society is probably different.
None of those are guns.
Okay.
None of those reasons you just gave have to do with the guns.
No,
so
I'm telling you why we're not comparable to Honduras. Now, we could compare ourselves to Germany or France or Italy or the United Kingdom, people that we are probably much more similar to in a holistic way in terms of economics, in terms of education, in terms of entertainment. And now the difference is guns. And we have far more homicides here with guns than those other countries do that we would consider ourselves comparable to. I've never in my life heard somebody say, the United States, oh yeah, well, let's look at a country that's very similar to us, like Honduras. I've never heard that before.
In a couple of years, we'll be more demographically similar to Honduras and the UK anyway, so I guess it'll be an accurate comparison then.
That's true. That is true.
Okay, well, that's probably good, considering that immigrants commit less crime than natives, and considering that Hispanic people tend to be underrepresented in lower income crimes than other groups of people. That's probably a good thing.
I mean, that's factual. You can look at the FBI stats. That isn't true. The point here
I mean, I have looked at the stats, and that is true, but okay.
I mean, I have FBI table 43 right in front of me, 2015 crime in the U.S. I can link it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. I already had this debate with your little white nationalist buddy, although you guys had a huge falling out. I'm sorry. And I mean, I've already done all of this data, but what else do we got besides black and brown people, or is that it?
All right.
Did you lose that one too, Destiny? Did you lose that one too?
No, I didn't. I think your friend actually started crying and rage quit that argument.
There was a university study done by the school. Go ahead.
I want to hear from Joe because I don't.
Sorry, Joe.
I don't want to dogpile, and this was Joe versus Destiny. What is on your mind, Joe?
I mean, I think we've already covered pretty much everything. I mean, a lot of the stuff that they're reiterating are the things we've already discussed, but they're doing it better. I'm not a professional debater. I don't do this all the time. I do a show. I talk to a fucking camera. I'm not used to doing all this. They're way better at debating this type of shit than I am. But I think we've already talked about a lot of this stuff, and we've gone over this. And what I think is an armed society is going to work. I think less restrictions, giving the power to the people to protect themselves because evil does exist. It's out there. People need the right to be able to protect themselves. And like I said this earlier, the difference between a gun being used for hunting and a difference between a gun being used for mass murder as a person, the difference between anything out there, any tool, any object being used for good or evil is the person. There's a people problem. We have a society issue. It's not, we can add gun laws all day long until our fucking eyes turn red and we shit blood out. It's not going to do anything because criminals don't give a flying fuck about those gun laws whatsoever. They're still going to get them. They're still going to find them, and they're still going to carry shit out. So what can we do at the school to stop those criminals who are going to get those guns? We put fucking armed security there. And we make sure that these kids are protected from those fucking psychotic people out there.
I just want to know. I always get into these debates.
Destiny, did you have a response to that?
I mean, I've said everything. I don't think that what he's saying is mutually exclusive with what I'm saying. I think that we should do everything we can do to protect our kids. If that means putting armed security guards there, that's fine. But I mean, we already had armed security guards at some of these schools, including the Florida one where the shooting just happened and they didn't do anything. I mean, keeping our kids safe is important. I just wish we would be a little bit more proactive rather than reactive about it. I don't consider arming every single teacher, in a school, in an education system where we already struggle to find funding or to arm security guards everywhere. Like, I just don't think that that's a reasonable path forward. Nobody else has to do this. It's embarrassing to me that when I'm, I stream to an international audience and, when I go to schools, I have to walk through a metal detector. That's just really embarrassing to me that in our country, we have to worry about violence so much that we send our kids into an area where we need armed security guards to keep them safe.
Yeah, it sucks, and it sucks to even think about that, and I understand that for sure. I mean, there was a guy who was at the sit-in that Trump had today who said that, once 9/11 happened, we did something about it right away. We put metal detectors, you have to take off your shoes, blah, 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 this, and that. And then there was another guy who said, oh, we have this program where we basically go out and we train teachers on how to recognize these kids and how to recognize, if these kids are have mental issues and things like that. And he said that his program has, and his child died in I believe it was Sandy Hook or something like that, and he said that we have already stopped mass shootings because of this program. I think it's definitely something that we should be looking at, all these different issues. I think that you guys mentioned that there was a YouTube comment made by Nicholas Cruz, I want to be a professional shooter, but that's not even the more concerning part of this whole thing, is that there was actually a threat of someone or someone alerted the FBI just 6 weeks ago, who said that Nicholas Cruz took some pictures online and told me that he was going to shoot up a school, and that was reported to the FBI, and they said that it was not sent to their Miami office. So you can have all the laws that you want, you can have all these different things going on. If they're not following through with these things, if they're not following through with these threats, that was a literal threat. I'm going to shoot up a school. I'm going to shoot up a school.
And that's why I said earlier, is we already have so many laws in place. We have to enforce them. We have people that are paid to do this job. We have people that are paid to look at that stuff, and they drop the ball. Even fucking Ray came out and said, yeah, we dropped the ball. And what's going to be done about that? Probably nothing. A slap on the hand of that. What we have to do is we already have a system of laws. We already have these things in place. When people fuck up and drop the ball, like what happened with the shooting in Parkland, Florida, motherfuckers' heads need to roll. That way, other people in that position of taking that information and making sure that it gets placed in and follow up on that person, if they don't do that, their fucking head gets cut the fuck off, essentially. So we have to become more strict on these people because, hey, if you fuck up, all right, this is on your fucking ass. Those 17 lives are on your ass because that's your fucking job. You're the Federal Bureau of Investigation. What the fuck are they investigating? Oh, that's right, the Trump-Russia hoax thing.
Russia, 13 Russian trolls.
Yeah, they're CNN's fucking taking people out to some old lady's house and badgering over some bullshit. We have all this dumb shit that's going on, but we actually have, like you said,
these are totally unrelated. Do you think that the office that's in charge of working on international crimes and shit are the same people that work in the Miami office that take tips for Florida? This is like a total non sequitur.
No.
Dude, he said he was going to shoot up a school.
Okay, but do you think that the people right now that are working on the FBI investigation team for foreign affairs and shit are the same people that would be taking this to? I don't see how this is like this is okay. My bad. This is where we bring up like every issue that we hate about liberals. Like
what we're saying is that they didn't follow through. There was 2 or 3 different warnings that they had. They literally had tips from people who said this kid is going to shoot up a school. Do something about it. They did nothing about it. And by the way, this is the thing that boggles my mind. Why is it only with school shootings does anyone care? When thousands and thousands of other shootings with guns happen, we never talk about guns and gun laws. And
we talk about guns all the time in the United States.
It's only when school
such
shootings
a lie.
happen.
Oh my
It's only when school shootings happen do we start talking about this. Not only that, but let me finish my last final thought here. There are 250,000 people die from medical errors every single year, whether that be during surgery, during mistreatment by doctors and things of that nature. Do we ever say that we need more regulations from the government on doctors because of these 250,000 people that die every single year? We never say that because the good outweighs the bad. There was a study out of the School of Criminology who stated that guns stop an estimated 2.5 million crimes per year. Now, a lot of different intellectuals say that those numbers are flawed. A lot of universities came out with counter studies to that. But even if that study is 75% inaccurate, the good still far outweighs the bad with how many crimes that guns prevent. Why are we looking at the what when it comes to guns, but we don't look at the guy who drives? Hold on. We don't look at the guy who's drunk, who gets into his car, crashes into a bunch of kids. We don't ever blame the car, and I understand that there's multiple uses for cars. We blame the person. We blame the alcoholism. We blame the disease. Why are we not strictly focusing on mental health right here? Because obviously this is kind of a new thing since 1998 since Columbine. Guns have existed here for hundreds of years, and this is kind of a new thing. So what changed? Did the gun change, or did we as a society change? And I'm willing to bet that we as a society, there had to have been some changes here that took place.
I don't even know.
This is a fairly new thing. This is a fairly new thing, Destiny. Be honest, this is a fairly new thing. This is not happening.
I don't even know. Like, there's like a million things. I stopped taking notes when I don't even know.
You don't have to take notes. Guns prevent more crimes than
If I were to give 100 nukes out to people in a country and then they start nuking each other, but they would say that like, well, 50 nukes stopped crimes. Like, this is such a ridiculous. Like,
Apples to oranges.
I'm sure that a lot of guns in America stop gun crimes, but that's only because the guns are already here. I don't understand how that's supposed to prove anything.
Like, guns stop crimes.
Yeah, because crimes are committed with crimes, or because crimes are committed with guns in the United States. I don't understand how that's a point that helps you at all.
Guns, no, the university out of the School of Criminology stated that guns stop an estimated 2.5 million crimes per year, not gun crimes.
Okay, the reason why you need guns to stop crimes in the United States is because it's so likely that your person that's coming to rob you or whatever is going to have a gun. This is like a circular thing, like... This is like I give out like a million...
No, most crimes are not committed with guns in the U.S.
But they could be. Nobody is ever going... If you're a store owner, if you're a personal person, you know, if you live in a house or whatever and you want to go buy protection, nobody's ever saying, well, get a really big knife because, well, what if the guy breaks in and has a gun? This is why we get guns in the United States. This is why our police officers are more armed than police in other countries typically. It's because the people that they have to go out against are usually more armed than the criminals in other countries.
What I'm saying is that why are we always looking at the with what when it comes to gun crime and not the why? Why are we not focused strictly on the why?
Because the why exists. The why exists in every other country, but the United States, the guns are like a force multiplier. Like, it's just something that allows people that are mentally ill to do so much more damage than they can in other states. If you're mentally ill in Germany, you're not going to buy an AR-15 and go shoot up a school. In the United States, you can.
I mean, what are you talking about? Are we talking about the amount of people killed now? I don't understand what you're getting at here. What are your solutions? I haven't heard you say one solution here.
That's because you haven't listened to any of the conversation. I gave several earlier.
You said that you don't want to ban any guns.
Yeah.
What is your solution? Stricter background checks? I mean, you said you want to talk about why these people kill people or targeting students, I said, yeah. I said, or looking at different students and trying to point out which ones are more prone to types of things.
Firstly, firearms are a force multiplier. We can all acknowledge that. That's why Joe was saying earlier that it evens the playing field to some extent for a small woman versus a large man. Okay, firearms are a force multiplier in a much more effective way than other types of weapons are. So I don't think that's controversial. And then in terms of like specific things that I've studied or that I've suggested, I don't know what the correct answer is. Opening up the CDC to allow them to make recommendations and to study gun violence seems like a good place to start. Doing targeted gun buybacks in certain cities seems like a good place to start to collect data just to see how this impacts homicide rates. Giving the government the ability to restrict certain people to buy firearms. For instance, when the FBI no-fly lists somebody, maybe they should be allowed to no-firearm list them as well. Currently, they're not able to do that. For instance,
do you know how many people were on the no-fly list that don't even belong there?
I don't know. So we're doing, again, this is like the Nirvana thing. Like, if I can't give you the perfect solution, you're going to tell me that we just have to live in a country where kids get executed in schools. Like,
no, Destiny. We're saying that people's individual rights and right to due process have to be protected.
Yeah,
you don't
I agree with that.
Again,
I care about due process. I don't care about, like, the amendment. Due process is important.
Okay.
But, again,
so
this is something...
But you want to use the FBI no-fly list, which is extrajudicial, by the way.
Wow, really? Are you saying you don't go to court? There's no due process? You're very smart, James. Thank you for that. That's a very good point. So...
Actually,
I do agree with that.
That is accurate.
It is accurate. I agree with you, Doug. I don't disagree.
You're proposing an anti-American solution. You're proposing something that would violate the right to due process.
I just don't want kids getting killed, James. I know you don't care about that, okay? But I do, okay?
Children, so here we go, Destiny. Put your boots on because you're jumping on the gravestones of the kids again.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry there are kid gravestones to jump on. Maybe if there weren't any, I wouldn't be able to stand on them. I mean, I'm sorry, dude. You're like blaming me that kids are getting killed in the United States. Destiny, how dare you? How dare you talk about these kids? The bodies are still warm. If we couldn't talk about mass shootings when the bodies are still warm, we could never have a conversation because people are being killed all the time in the U.S.
Again, you're missing the point.
So to address James's point,
entirely emotional point.
Okay,
what you are proposing is a solution that would take away the rights of Americans.
That's
right.
right.
The due process rights. Okay. Yes, Destiny. And you can keep interjecting, little guy.
I mean, I don't disagree with anything you're about to say. I don't know why, but you find it really necessary to say it. So go ahead.
Well, I haven't said my whole piece, so why don't you shut the fuck up and let me finish?
Go ahead, buddy.
Okay. Cool.
Be civil. Be civil.
So here's what we have.
Yeah. I like that I didn't even get to finish my point before James gets on here and starts talking. That's great. Go ahead.
Proposal.
Wait. Can I finish, Baked Alaska?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, thanks. Okay, cool. So the FBI that has the ability to no-fly list people should be allowed to probably no-gun list people as well. Now, I do acknowledge that there is currently no oversight, as far as I'm aware, on the no-fly list stuff. I'm pretty sure the FBI only does that internally. There is no independent agency that verifies that, and it is something that does not entail due process. That is a problem. If we're going to start putting no-gun lists out, right, that the FBI manages, that's a much bigger deal than a no-fly list because you have a constitutional right to own a firearm, whereas you don't have a constitutional right to fly a plane. So if we were to tell the FBI that they can no-gun list people, we would obviously have to find a way to vet that process better. So either make it open to another organization, maybe the DOJ, to go through and independently verify it, or maybe make that process a little bit more transparent or open to appeals in some way to make that a little bit more acceptable so that your rights aren't being trampled over by an intelligence community organization without any type of oversight. I don't disagree with that.
Okay, so we just saw this memo come out exposing the collusion between the DOJ, the FBI, and the FISA courts. So we've tried this whole independent verification.
No, there
thing.
wasn't. I don't remember any memo that came out showing collusion between.
Come on,
I read the entire Nunes memo. There was nothing about collusion between the FISA courts, the DOJ, and the FBI. Maybe we read different.
The entirety of the memo.
Was this like the Daily Caller version, or?
No, this is the actual memo, which I don't think you actually read.
I read it. It was 4 pages long. Yeah. What about it?
Yeah. Okay. Let me finish. We saw that there was at least wrongdoing. If you don't want to say collusion.
No, we didn't. We didn't see that. I don't know what you read, dog. I'm sorry. I don't really want to talk about the news.
I know what you read, dog. We're talking about the Nunes memo.
Can you
say the specific thing that you're talking about?
Yes.
That the dossier was all bullshit and they used that exclusively, even though the memo didn't prove it.
Chill out, bud.
I don't want to get into like fucking conspiracy theory. Are we going to debate flat Earth next? Like, this is just boring to me. Like, if this.
It's just boring.
You know there were crisis actors, right?
Crisis actors where? In the school shooting?
Hold on.
Right, yeah.
What? Oh, God.
So let's talk about something very real. Let's talk about.
Okay, wait, hold on. Was the FISA thing before or after Bush did 9/11? Just so I have my timetables right here. Like.
I'm sorry?
Was the FISA thing? Did these guys help Bush do 9/11 too, or is this a different group of like deep state operatives?
I know
or
you want to make it look ridiculous, but if you would let me finish, you would see there's actually some very deeply concerning issues at play here.
Go for it. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get it out.
I keep interrupting.
So basically, what we saw, yes, you do. In the Nunes memo, maybe lay off the Red Bull. What we saw in the Nunes memo was.
We're losing you, buddy.
I think the deep state is after him. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
deep state.
Sure, I'm talking specific agencies here, guys. So what we saw is these agencies were signing off on illicit FISA surveillance memos based on fraudulent information that they knew at the time was not verifiable.
That wasn't
not
proven in the memo.
Actually, yes, it was.
No, it wasn't.
So yes,
James Comey said it was salacious and unverified.
James Comey, the FBI, and these officials were publicly
He said that the dossier was salacious and unverified, but the FISA warrants.
What they used to get the
no,
FISA warrant.
These FISA warrants existed before the dossier was even known about. These are different. This idea that they only went by that dossier is what's in the Nunes memo, but that's all the Nunes memo mentions. Keep in mind that Nunes himself that released this memo wasn't even in the fucking room when they were going over the information. You know who was? You know who was? Gowdy was in the room. And Gowdy himself tweeted that he didn't think that any of this investigation was compromised. And he was the one that saw the actual documents. Interesting. How do you explain that?
Here it is. It says it right here in the Nunes memo. The dossier compiled by Christopher Steele on behalf of the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton campaign formed an essential part of the Kaiser Page.
That is the claim in the memo, but the counterclaim is that all of the information isn't there.
It's a claim made also by James Comey and other FBI officials.
No. Comey did not say that. Comey did not say that they procured FISA warrants solely on the dossier. That is a Nunes-specific claim that the FBI contests, and that the Democrats, as part of the House Intel Committee, want to release a counter memo clarifying. And it's something that Gowdy himself, the only one, not Nunes, who didn't see the actual documents, Gowdy himself, who saw the documents, disagrees with Nunes' assessment about that, about the dossier and the FISA-related stuff. So can you tell me why Gowdy disagrees with Nunes? I'm curious. Or is he controlled by the deep state as well?
I don't know what Gowdy's motivations are, but I know.
Okay, then it sounds like you haven't followed any of this at all. So I don't really care what you've read off of like some random bullshit website.
Neither in the initial application in 2016 or any of the renewals, none of the applications or any of the renewals to get this warrant to spy on people disclose the reference to the role of the DNC, the Clinton campaign, or any of the funding for Steele's efforts. Now we know that they
already had FISA warrants in 2013 for Carter Page.
They're saying that. Well, yeah. They're saying that Christopher Steele was a foreign agent who used this who was paid for by the DNC.
Originally by the Republicans, and then picked up for by the DNC.
In any of the applications throughout the entire process.
We'll see when the Democrats if the Democrats are allowed to release a counter memo that the FBI can help with. Maybe we'll see if that's actually true.
But anyway, get back. Let's hear what James is trying to go.
And I'm still curious why Gowdy would know this, and Gowdy wouldn't back his buddy Nunes up at all. That's very interesting to me. When Gowdy was the one that saw the actual documents and not Nunes himself. But
maybe it's the same answer on why he retired. I don't know. Go ahead, James.
We have conflicting information there because FBI officials also were saying that the FISA warrants would have never been approved if it had not been for the Steele dossier. So we have that coming from the FBI officials who actually sought these warrants, and actually from DOJ officials as well.
Which FBI officials say this?
That was, I believe it was Comey or it was Christopher Wray.
It definitely was not Comey. So who was the other guy?
Ray said that. Christopher Wray said that. Christopher Wray said that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I know it was somebody at the FBI. So the point being here that saying we can trust the deep state, saying we can trust these intelligence agencies to be just neutral arbiters of who and who should not own guns in America is a very short-sighted idea to embark on, because we know that these agencies are politically motivated. We know from these Christopher Strzok texts, for example, that these people are politically motivated to stop Donald Trump from getting elected. They would be politically motivated to stop right-wingers from owning guns, from owning firearms. We can look back to cases like Ruby Ridge and cases like Waco and these other examples going back even further.
I can't find anything about Christopher Wray saying this as well. I'm pretty sure you've completely fabricated this information. I know Comey for a fact didn't say it, and I don't see anything about.
The Guardian reported that.
Okay, I would enjoy seeing that. If we want to have a conversation about like conspiracy theories, I can't really. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. If you think that the deep state is going to like fuck all Republicans, then the solution is going to be the least amount of government possible, because you always think the deep state is going to hunt Republicans. But I can't have a conversation conversation with you because I can only have like reality-based conversations. I can't do this.
The reality
Let's
is
have a reality
you're
conversation with
advocating.
the IRS scandal, Destiny. Let's have an reality.
You mean the IRS scandal that was massively fucking overblown that ended up being almost nothing? That there was a couple of fuck-ups in terms of like the political organizations that were audited, but it wasn't targeted towards conservatives like the original claim.
Would testify on record about it. That's why everyone was.
Oh, so not testifying on record means that you're guilty. So you think Trump is guilty of collusion because he won't testify under oath? Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay.
And we actually have evidence. We actually have evidence of the IRS scandal and no evidence of
we
Trump
have evidence that the IRS targeted conservative organizations, but the DOJ never brought any charges against anybody in the IRS. That's very interesting, James. Must be the deep state again. It must be the deep state again.
Destiny. Almost like the government should not. We should not place infinite faith in the government to do the right thing all the time.
Because somehow all of these totally independent organizations, some of which have heads that were appointed by Trump himself, still seem to all be working together. How strange is that?
Implying these government organizations are independent. Implying the FBI.
They're not. They all work together.
What does this have to do with guns?
Who the fuck? Well, the conversation. The problem is that like any type. The problem.
If I can just conclude the point here. The point being that giving the FBI and DOJ the authority, right? And I keep getting derailed. Giving the FBI and the DOJ the authority to determine who and who cannot, which Americans cannot own guns, is a recipe for censorship of our rights to own guns.
Gotcha.
All right, so let Destiny respond to that, please.
Yeah, it's a deep state meme. I don't know. What I'm really curious about is how so this deep state, they fucking bus in millions of immigrants to vote. They control the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, all of these different sections of government. How the fuck did Trump win the election? Damn, he won by like 100,000 votes. How is this possible? If the deep state is so fucking powerful.
What he's saying is
how did the deep state
advocating for? You're literally advocating to give your rights into the hands of the federal government to decide what you can and can't do.
That's what we do as a society. That's called living in a republic. Yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah, but it's unelected to decide if
who's
they can
unelected?
come to your house. What I'm saying is you're giving the FBI officials the right to come to determine if they want to write a law so that they can come into your house to make sure you have your gun locked up in a gun safe.
Sure, and if you don't like it, then we elect different officials that appoint different officials to do this stuff. This is why we live in a democratic republic.
You're okay. So you're completely okay with just giving the FBI full control on who and who cannot have a gun.
I mean, it depends on how they enact it. I mean, if they can find it in a way that limits the amount of homicides that occur in the United States, then probably sure. It's going to be like this is like a data-oriented conclusion. If they're doing it arbitrarily or to target political opponents or whatever, obviously that's fucking abhorrent, and that shouldn't be okay. But if they can do it in a way that stops or massively curbs the amount of homicides, especially mass shootings in places like schools in the United States, then yeah, I would be okay with that.
But what if it doesn't?
Then I obviously wouldn't be in favor of it. I like guns. I like shooting. It's fun for me. I wouldn't be in favor of giving the FBI the ability to do it if they weren't effective at doing it. It would be horrible. I would abdicate it immediately.
I think that's where the problem lies, is that it ends up being so subjective, and that's why I think personally, in my opinion, it's important to protect the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was not created for hunting. The Second Amendment was made to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government if things get out of control, and so we should have that right as U.S. citizens.
Sure. So
unless we have some crazy mental problem, and putting that into other people's hands. You yourself love guns, and you have a gun to protect yourself. I've seen videos of you getting scared. You think someone's going to break in, and you go and grab your firearm. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. But we can't have other people controlling, our right to own a firearm.
Okay, but if they're able to do it in a way that dramatically stops... Okay, let me ask you this. Let's say that we give the government this power, and they do it in a way that prevents 95% of firearm homicide-related death in the United States, including suicides. Would you be okay with this, or would you not be okay with this? In that perfect world, and I acknowledge that the chances of that happening are slim to none. Would you be okay with that?
I wouldn't be, because the only way that they would be able to do that is to literally gather up every single gun in the country and melt them down.
That's not going to happen.
So we can't not even a hypothetical, boys?
Well, okay, what about Joe?
Well, I mean,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
What does Joe think? What does Joe think? A hypothetical, if we could, eliminate 95% of gun violence, I believe you said, would you do it hypothetically?
Without doing like blanket bans on every guns, right? Or on every type of gun, or without like depriving I don't want to cast a wide net.
So if you could have like a magic...
I have one stance and one stance only. I believe in the Second Amendment. I want my gun to be able to protect myself. I want my wife to be able to make that decision if she wants one or not. I want my next door neighbor to be able to decide if they want one or not. I am not for... we already have laws, and I think we should fucking hold the people accountable that are enforcing them. and make them do it. When they drop the ball, like what we saw last week, those people get fucking punished for it. This whole living in a fantasy land where this shit doesn't exist, well, I don't believe in that. I'm not fucking playing. I live in this world. I live in this reality. I live in America, and I want my guns. I want to be able to protect myself from some crazy lunatic fuck.
I mean, what did Prohibition do? Did Prohibition... No, all it did was created a bigger demand, and then it created organized crime, and then it created all sorts of different things. I err on the side of the drug argument. I think that we should legalize drugs as well, because I don't think laws stop people from possessing drugs. You know, selling is a different issue. You have them separately bagged and things like that. But like banning the bump stock, I mean, that's just fucking retarded. Like, anyone could mill a bump stock. Look at Cody Wilson with the ghost gun. Look, you can 3D print a bump stock so easily. And with the banning of the AR-15, we already know that didn't work either. 16 mass shootings happened from 1994 to 2004, killing 106 total people, including Columbine, which was perpetrated by a sawed-off shotgun and a 9mm. So none of these, all you're doing is just completely making it harder for law-abiding citizens, considering the fact that 90% of the gun crime it happens with illegally obtained firearms.
I don't know why we're comparing Prohibition or the drug war to this. I'm not talking about getting rid of all guns. I'm talking about targeted actions. I feel like we keep going back to this weird straw man where I'm going to ban all guns.
I feel like I agree with you. I agree with you, like in the sense that the one guy who was talking to Trump today, he says he has a program. His kid was a victim. He has a program in training teachers on how to identify these troubled kids, right? These mentally unstable kids, and this led to someone investigating his home who he had a whole huge cache of guns that were illegally obtained. So I agree with you in the sense that we need to start, training teachers and how to identify.
You had the grandmother in Washington State, I believe, who thought that there was something wrong with her grandson, could sense that there was something going on. When he left the school, she went and looked in the room, saw this journal, saw that he was plotting to kill people. He had a gun hidden in a guitar case, and she was able to notify law enforcement and rectify that situation, and that stopped the shooting. It's not a gun issue. We keep talking about it. It's a people issue, and we as people, we as a society can learn to pay attention more. We can learn to pay attention to the people around us.
Destiny admitted that, though. He said that the reason why he thinks why there's more gun crime in Honduras, where it's almost impossible to get a gun, is because of economics. It's because of many different things. So let's look at those things. Let's look at why 30% of white children, 56% of Hispanic children, and 73% of black children are living in fatherless homes today, which makes you statistically more likely to develop a mental disorder and lead to a life of crime. Let's look at those
None of these things are exclusionary of what I've said. Like, we can do all of this at the same time.
While banning guns. While imposing more gun laws. Not banning guns, you didn't say that, but you said you want to give some federal bureaucrat the power to determine if you're on the no-fly list or not, whether you can have a gun, and giving the power to the state once again.
So would you be in favor of any type of restriction or any type of legislation that would restrict the access to firearms of certain people that we could identify as at-risk individuals? Would you restrict...
Yeah, the Texas church shooter had a fucking domestic abuse charge. He was in a military prison for 12 months, and he still was able to buy a gun legally.
Okay,
yes,
so you would get, you're not in favor of
checks.
You're not in favor of any type of way to limit, from the government point of view, of any type of way to limit the amount of gun violence relating to guns.
If the background check was more thorough on the Texas church shooter, he wouldn't have been able to purchase a gun. They would have noticed that he was in prison and abused his wife or girlfriend or whatever. Yes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get a yes or no. So, oh shit, I just left the fucking call. Wait, I think I left for a second. Fuck.
We lost it.
There he is.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I'm just trying to understand this for sure. So, would you be okay with any type of action, or do you think we have enough that exists right now?
No, I just said that stricter background checks may be something that we could definitely look at.
When you say stricter background checks, what do you mean by that? Like,
okay, for instance, in California, I can't remember the last time I bought a gun. I have 5 of them, but 10 days.
Is he fuzzy for anybody else?
Yeah, I can't hear anything right now.
Yeah, you're sorry. We got sorry. We got a little bit of a scuffed stream here. Vince, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you guys? Did you hear everything I said?
You cut out.
No.
Do that again.
Okay. Okay. So, for instance, in California, I can't remember the last time I bought a gun. I have several here in California, but I think you have to wait 30 days for a handgun and then 10 days for a shotgun. I think I'm correct. Like I said, it's been like a year since I bought a gun, and it's a lot easier here to purchase a weapon than it is in Illinois, for instance, where you need an FOID card and all of these different things.
Wait, it's easier in California to buy a weapon than it is in Illinois?
Yeah, it's easier in California because you don't need an FOID card here. You just need to go through it's much easier than it is, because I used to live in Illinois. Much easier to buy here in California than it is in Illinois.
Wait, are you comparing yourself to like Chicago? Because I know in Chicago it's really hard to get a firearm.
Maybe in the city of Chicago they have different regulations, but in Illinois you have to have an FOID card, which you do not have to have here in California. The waiting time for a handgun, I think, is much more. The background checks, maybe for the Texas church shooter, were a little bit more thorough. They would have noticed that he was in jail for abusing his wife. You know, I mean, come on. And he was on a whole bunch of SSRIs. There was a lot of red flags with that guy, and I think a stricter background check, or maybe a more thorough background check, probably would have prevented.
Sure. So in looking up this, apparently the problem was that typically this type of felony conviction will get you on a list where you can't purchase a firearm, but because it was a military related thing, he was court-martialed, and they didn't enter that conviction into the necessary database, so it wasn't looked up when he went to purchase the firearm.
Right. That was a mistake on their part. They didn't enter the conviction into a database. So that's what I'm saying. So these laws are there, but
that's not every single shooter though, right?
No, that's not every single shooter. But like I've said, 90% of the shootings here that occur are with illegally obtained firearms from black market and stolen from houses.
Do you think we should do anything to try to get rid of the amount of illegal firearms that exist in the United States?
Yeah, stop and frisk.
How does that? Like, so the only thing we should do is just approach people on the street and.
It worked. It worked in New York.
It didn't work in New York. That's why they got rid of it. I'm pretty sure
they got rid of it because they got rid of it because they didn't want to seem racist.
Everything I've ever seen about stop and frisk in New York doesn't. I've never seen anything that says that stop and frisk worked. I don't think there was a reduction in crime. I don't think it was more effective.
Okay, so for the illegal firearms that are mostly, as we've stated, are
also, hold on. Also, stop and frisk that's a huge constitutional violation. That's something that I wouldn't be comfortable with. A police officer walking up to me and then demanding to frisk me with absolutely no prior reason, that's a huge violation.
It's probable cause.
There is no probable for him to walk up and look at me and want to frisk me. What's the probable cause?
I don't think many people would want to walk up and frisk you, but personally. But I'm just saying, I'm just saying that I'm just giving solutions. What is your solution for all the illegally owned guns that? Well,
I proposed earlier, earlier I proposed some sort of like amnesty buyback, but I mean that was hold on, because we had a funny pivot. Okay, this is a massive violation of due process, arguably worse than the FBI thing. The idea that a fucking cop can walk up to me and frisk me with no probable cause because that's what stop and frisk was about. We didn't need stop and frisk if you needed probable cause to walk up and temporarily detain somebody.
Who's gonna more than likely sell their guns back? I mean, I highly doubt criminals are gonna be like,
yeah,
all right, guys, here you go. I'll take some legal
Yeah.
gun owners out there. Like we saw, there's a fucking video that went viral. This guy fucking sawed his gun in half. He goes, after the school shooting, I'm disgusted by this, and he saws his gun in half. And there, he cucked out. He did it. Cool, whatever. You know, there's people out there that would sell their guns back, and I've seen people make videos about that. But
and maybe it doesn't.
You're not going to have criminals who go and carry out these attacks. That's not a way to get them.
Maybe it doesn't work.
Guys, take the guns and.
Okay, maybe it doesn't work, but why not try it once and see if it does work?
Though? Well, how about this? How about every time one of these assholes, they have guns, then let's just say for the sake of this argument, you destroy the gun. Every time these guys get picked up, they don't get thrown into an office, which eventually gets stolen over time, or someone picks it up and then it gets circulated back into the crowd and back into the people again. Every time these criminals are picked up and they have guns obtained illegally, they're destroyed. And then you would start decreasing the number. I don't want to have people stop and frisk me either, because I can be very angry and snap.
Yeah, maybe that is probably a bad idea, the stop and frisk thing, but I'm just trying to throw solutions out there. What I'm trying to say is
I thought Destiny said he would try anything, but
no, and that's not. No, I wouldn't try anything.
Yeah,
no.
you said anything. Let's protect the children, Destiny.
No, what? I never said I would try anything. We make trade-offs all the time with the freedoms that we have as American citizens for some things that happen in society. We make a massive trade-off with automobiles, for instance, where we accept some level of death. We make a trade-off for terrorism, where we accept some level of death because we have our personal freedoms and our right to be unencumbered and fucked with by other people. So no, I'm not in favor of trading off every single freedom. It's just that when we talk about guns specifically, I don't know if the Second Amendment's intention was to allow you to have a 30-round, 40-round magazine in an AR-15. I don't know if that was the intent of the original Second Amendment, and I don't know if that's an overall positive thing for society. It's to own firearms recreationally as the trade-off of having shootings in schools. I just don't know if I'm comfortable with that trade-off. Now, something like stop and frisk, that's a hard no for me. Fuck no, do I think cops should be allowed to walk up and frisk you for no probable cause? That's a huge no. I hate that idea.
What if it saves lives, Destiny? I mean, I thought you were about saving the lives of the children.
It would have to be a massive increase in life saving.
If stop and frisk stopped 95% of gun violence.
If it stopped 95%, maybe,
Yes.
maybe, but even so,
only maybe.
yeah, maybe, but it would have to be a massive stop. But even at that, I'm not sure. I would still have to think about this would be like exhaust every other option first.
So we could save all the kids, all the children. Thought you cared about the children. Destiny.
System after that.
Hold on, wait.
Think about the amount of
What?
Well, okay.
how many people carry paraphernalia.
Sorry, we're losing you, Joe.
The stop and frisk wouldn't even stop school shootings, because stop and frisk would only find people who are carrying handguns, and most school shootings are committed with rifles. So
okay,
I just don't know if stop and frisk is that viable either.
Yeah, I don't think stop and frisk.
I'm just throwing out things because I think what started this was me saying and reiterating that over 90% of the gun crime in the U.S. is with illegally obtained guns. And he said, how can we get rid of these illegally owned firearms? And most of the shootings that occur in the U.S. are with handguns. Mm-hmm. So if 90% of the shootings, 90+% of the gun crime in this country is committed with guns that are already illegal to have, then why are we even talking about instituting more laws in the first place? Why aren't we looking at why the black and Hispanic community commit all these different shootings? Why aren't we looking at those?
And by the way, just so you guys know, James and Vince and Joe, so on Destiny's Live on his Twitch channel, CX in the chat, everyone. This is Big Delaski, your boy. I'm not a cuck. I want you to do CX in the chat right now. But he wrote on here that one of your guys' points is black people. Get rid of black people. I hate black people. So whatever you said about racial demographics to Destiny, that means that you guys hate black people and you want to get rid of them.
We're just trying to look at the reasons why. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, no, sorry, Vince. Vince, Joe, Bick, I think we should all start the Red Elephants gun buyback fund. I'm offering $20 to any liberals who want to sell me their Glock 19 because I need a new one, preferably Gen 4. So email me, let's set it up. We'll do a transfer because I just really want to help get the guns off the streets. Secondly, it's a very noble cause. Secondly, the idea of gun buybacks hasn't worked so far in the United States where it's been tried. Chicago did a $250,000 buyback in 2016. Hasn't had a measurable effect on homicide homicide rates. We saw the 2017 homicide rates, in fact, higher than ever before. So the gun buybacks are not having the measurable effect in the U.S. And then thirdly, the idea that this is somehow talking about crime rates somehow is indicative of hatred or indicative of bigotry. It's not. I mean, we can those political beliefs aside, beliefs about ethno-nationalism or something aside, we should be able to look honestly at the rate of crime in the U.S. and see who is committing the violent crime. And we cannot honestly
I don't disagree with that. But if I know that you are,
hold on, Dustin, let me finish. Hold on,
oh Jesus Christ!
We cannot. I'm sorry, you got to be patient.
No, it's just you and Fuentes do this, like, you rattle off like 50 points and then like, okay, now that I've said like my 500 things at the end.
For like 30 seconds, so just let me finish.
Wait, to be fair, can you let because there's already points. Could you let Destiny?
I don't disagree that we should look at things realistically. I'm not going to pull out the libcuck answer and say like we can't, like, black people do commit more crime per capita in every way that you can measure than white people in the United States. That's not undeniable. But I know that you're somebody that supports like a white ethno state, so it's hard to have that conversation with you. It's hard to have that conversation with you, the hardcore traditional like get rid of all the immigration and all that shit, because I know that a lot of your reasoning is going to be motivated reasoning. So it's hard for me to have a conversation with you unless you've dramatically changed your point of view on this over the past. Or we have different. Wait, would you say that Fuentes is in favor of like a white ethno state or no?
I don't know. I haven't talked to him in over
You
a
don't
month.
know? Okay, so I don't. Yeah, so I don't really trust your opinion then on whether or not you're okay with a white ethno state or not. So, but yeah, so like I would never have this conversation with you because it would just be an argument about race-related things, because that's what we would have to focus on, because all of your arguments are going to stem from probably this idea that black or Hispanic people are intrinsically more violent than white people for whatever reason.
No, but I think we can actually look at research that shows that there is a link between low IQ and criminality.
God, yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And you believe genetically that black people have a lower IQ than white people, and this is a proven, intelligence research thing. So like, this is the conversation.
It's very interesting, Dustin. You talk about the children, you talk about wanting to make things better for the children and better for American society. But when we start talking about ways to study and understand gun crime and understand why these children are dying, understand why families are being destroyed, why African American children are growing up 80% without fathers, oftentimes because their fathers are being killed in gun violence. When we start talking about ways to address these issues honestly, you pivot away and say that you don't want to talk about issues.
No, I'm not pivoting away, but it would have to be with somebody that I know is capable of having a fact-based conversation. For instance, do you believe that IQ is intrinsically linked to race? That race is like a big indicator of your IQ in a way that is genetically heritable?
Destiny, I'm not going to pretend to be a scientist. But
do you think that's true or not?
Studies by people like Arthur Jensen and
do you think that's true or not?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, okay, so we can't really have this conversation then, because you're talking like in terms of conspiracy theory.
I'll give you statistics that you find inconvenient.
No, it's not about statistics. You're trying to. If you're coming at this conversation,
I'll give you empirical research.
You're not. There is none. No. If you're going to come out, if you're going to, I'm not afraid at all. I'm not afraid at all about being thrown links from Jared Taylor and Richard Spencer and all these random people that like, oh well, we've 100% proven the link that IQ is something that can be largely determined by race on a genetic basis. Like, this isn't a conversation that's related in reality.
So basically what we figured out is that you support a buyback program as a means to try to see if that would work.
As one thing of many things. I don't know if that would work. But sure.
Yes, I know. I understand.
Yeah.
And my counter to that was the fact that who's actually going to be selling those guns back?
Yeah, and we would have to try it and see what would happen. It's possible that you do a program like this, they do it in like a LA or some shit, and literally like 10 people turn in their guns, and it's like fucking 60-year-old like grandmas that just don't want this shit anymore, right?
That's what it is. It's not a forced thing. It's not a forced thing nationwide. You know what? Destiny, I support the trying of that in a place like LA.
Cool. Or Chicago or DC or Baltimore or any of these places.
Baltimore, but not goddamn Texas.
We tried Chicago, didn't work. We tried Chicago, didn't work.
I know.
Well, they tried Australia.
Here, hold up, guys. Let's try to wrap up.
Okay, so I just have one question for everybody. Would you be okay? I'm just curious. Would you be okay with opening it up and allowing the CDC to study gun violence again to see if they can make recommendations on things that we can do to curb the amount of gun violence in the United States? Yes or no?
I'm personally not opposed to more people doing research on things. The more information we have, the more information that we can take and use, the better and smarter we are to make decisions in life. So I don't care how many people out there are chasing statistics and writing down information and logging that's fine with me. Fucking McDonald's can do it too. I don't care. But that still isn't really going to change that much. But yes, that's fine. They can do it.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. And so I'm going to have you guys give your closing statements here in a second. Yeah, Destiny, I would say, I think you've made some good points. I think, in my opinion, the main thing that I think you're weak on is that you say you want more gun control, and you want to solve all these things, but then you don't really have solutions, and you're like, oh, I guess we could try this. I guess we could try that. I guess we could look into this, but you don't have any like really solid positions where you're like, we must do this to stop gun violence. We must do this. There hasn't been a single thing that you said we must do. You said, oh, maybe we'll try this, maybe we'll try that. So, I mean, maybe that's just...
Wait, so I'll repeat what I said earlier, where I think I've given several things that we could try as, one, let the FBI know gun
But that's what I'm saying. It's all we could try.
Well, because we haven't done it yet.
But if you believe so firmly in your position, you should have concrete, solid solutions.
But if we haven't done it yet, I can't have concrete data for you.
Well, then no one has data, so...
So that's why we have to try it and see what happens. Yeah.
I'm for this. And look, let's just say this.
Okay.
Let's say that, for instance, if we were going to allow the FBI to do this, I say they have to do it in a specific time frame. Give them a few years or whatever, and if we can statistically find out, proven that they can handle this better, that they